Hello, all of you love bombers, bangers, love bangers, better than gang bangers. Hope you're all well. I'm here with General Shinobi. What an honor to be here. Hey, brother, how you doing?
Hey, man. We eventually got there.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of technical issues. So, what's on your mind, dear brother?
So, I just wanted to have a conversation with you today, really. There's been a lot of stuff going on. I've been diving into Operation Bluebeam recently, which seems to cover everything. Like, I hear people talking about stuff on podcasts and some things you mention, and it all seems to be Operation Bluebeam, which is this kind of Project Fear to keep us kind of constricted and stuff. And just on Sunday, so 2 days ago here in the UK, there was an emergency alert sent out on everyone's phones, which happened in April of 2023 as well. And this is supposed to be if there's a terrorist attack or extreme weather. But what's interesting is that September the 7th, which was when the alert was, is a 7/7 because Sept is the 7, right? Even though it's the 9th month. So that's 7/7. There was Operation Pegasus, which was an NHS sort of like scenario, public health, pandemic preparedness scenario, done on the 16th of July, which is another 7/7. And that pandemic scenario was supposed to happen between September and November. And also between September and December, the Pegasus constellation is visible. And the operation was called Operation Pegasus. And between September and November, there's a hostile alien invasion coming towards us, according to Harvard scientists. So that's all part of Operation Bluebeam, like a fake alien invasion space show. Pegasus is a white horse. The white horse of the apocalypse is the first horseman of the apocalypse, who would be either the Christ or the Antichrist, which would be seen in the sky, perhaps much like this fake alien invasion, like space show. So I've just made I've connected lots of dots recently, and just it's just interesting because when you kind of see the Project Fear that's put out there, the false evidence appearing real, the kind of the darkness of the weight gets lifted. Like when something's observed, it changes how you perceive it. So looking into all this kind of conspiracy theories and stuff, and even with like etymology and stuff, it really has helped to lighten my mind to sort of just let it flow, you know? So yeah, man.
Yeah, brother. I just got to find my stream out. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, on the flow, rolling and going. Yeah, man. I hope you guys are all well. The guys that are in the chat. Sorry, it was we weren't planning this for long. Sort of came out. Namaste, beautiful hollowbone hawk. Hope you are good. You know, interesting what you say about Harvard. Huh? I didn't hear that they made that announcement, but nothing surprises me these days. I think there's been this play on extraterrestrialism in the mainstream community, you know, in parliaments and in the White House and Congress and the media. They've been prepping us, and we were originally taught that it was a hoax and it was nonsense and there was no such thing as aliens. And of course, there was no such thing as alien research, and like Area 51 was just a conspiracy theory. Well, now they're telling us that no, it's true. We were lying to you all those years, and but we lied to you if we weren't good. So one's just got to take it all with a huge, big, fat pinch of salt and say, well, where do we stand?
Well, this is the thing. Both could be a hoax. It seems to be the pendulum swings both ways. So they could have lied to us for a while, and now the truth is coming out. Everyone's like, oh, you see, it's true. But is it? Is it? Because it's like, is the world round? Is it flat? Is it either? Probably not. It's probably a lot more interesting than that. Did COVID come from a bat to a human? Or, oh, the truth is that it was released from a lab. Was that the truth? Is it? Because it's always the third way. It's always the middle way. It's not this or that. It's always the third way. So them lying about aliens and now the truth coming out could be either, you know.
Yeah, I think that is so on point, and it's something that's been on my mind lately is this tribal telepathy, and the way our tribal telepathy has been taken away from us, and it's been replaced with this interweb telepathy, right? So we can like send each other digital messages instantly and have semblance of communication, but the expense is that we're not as switched on and tuned into each other as what we used to be, because one of the old sayings that I loved as a child was that, necessity is the mother of invention. And so when there's a need, there's a push to develop. I developed night vision living in the jungles because I needed to. And I forced myself to need to by not having a torch, so that at night I had to develop night vision because, well, it's pretty dangerous if you don't have night vision, because you could step on a snake or a scorpion, or you could hurt yourself. And if you're deep in the jungle and you hurt yourself, well, that could be a sentence, like that final sentence that goes on a tombstone. So, mother is the seed for any developmental abilities that we have. And this is why austerities are such a big thing in all the old development techniques of magical spiritual techniques, sweat lodges, meditation, fasting. These are all austere practices that force the psyche to evolve at a high speed, and part of that evolution brings with it an insight, and the insight often relates to tribal telepathy. So it seems like they're using this tribal telepathy. They're putting out propaganda, and they're hitting it from every direction, from social networking, from billboards, from our phone, from the news, from Hollywood, from our films. And they're putting this powerful current into our head. And a big part of that current for me, if I put my finger on the pulse, it seems to be really eugenics is a big part of it. And eugenics is somehow connected to and a part of the transhumanist movement. And I think this transhumanist movement is really like possibly even involved with all this extraterrestrial phenomenon that we're experiencing. Because, of course, if they're talking to us about extraterrestrialism, maybe they're ready to bring in a new kind of technology. And they don't want to say to us, listen, we've been secretly working on this technology for the last 50 years behind your backs and you didn't know. It's a much better option to say, we met this green little guy from Mars and he gave us this box. Look what it does. Right? Like, let's put it in your home. Let's put one inside your body. And I think it's all just a control mechanism. I think it's all just the same drama, and we know where that comes from, right? Well, what was it that you were talking about recently as well? Project Bluebeam. I don't think this is new.
No.
Demons are coming to get you.
Well, Project Bluebeam was written, I think, I can't remember. It was written by a Canadian journalist in 19. Oh, I should really remember this because I did a podcast about it the other day. Anyway, it was written not too long ago, and it was basically a plan to bring in a one world government. And some of the points were to create a one world religion using AI. Another one would be to destroy the family unit, so that people look outwards for guidance rather than to their family or to their sort of people close to them. Like, so we've been divided, so much division. Like recently, people are being detached from God. That's another one. So God just meaning source or a higher self or a guide, so that global governments can be the new guide ushering people in a certain direction. But this has certainly been going on for much longer than that. The thing is, with the guy that wrote it, is he had his daughter taken away from him because he was homeschooling her, and he was arrested for what he wrote. So it clearly had something to it that triggered the people in government in Canada. So there's clearly some truth to it. But it was supposed to happen around the year 2000, I think. 2001 was definitely a huge step towards this totalitarianism, basically, with the Terrorism Act, etc. And in 2001, there was a fear, frequency, and a fable. This 666 blue beam projecting fear, which was the fear was terrorism, the frequency was 3G, and the fable was it's Islam straight away. And I do think it's been happening for a very long time. I've sort of combined it with the Little season, supposedly when Satan or Iron Man is released into the world, because it kind of ties in with that, with like religions being corrupted for like the last 1,000 years, the fall of what I call the old world, or like Tartaria. In the 1800s, there was a shift. Something definitely happened in the 1800s, because the whole frequency of this realm shifted. We used to build beautiful buildings. There used to be fresh drinking water everywhere. And now there's kind of a more constricting energy. And they have the technology to do a giant space show in the sky via holograms. They have the technology to detach people from God via magnetism, because they did experiments in 2015 where by disabling parts of the brain using magnetism, it affected the prefrontal cortex, which is your critical thinking and your foresight. And people lost their faith in God and the afterlife, and they were more okay with immigration as well. So basically, via magnetism, it disrupts your self-identity, which would be your Ba, part of your soul, which ties into COVID, because before lots of variants, it said Ba, B-A. And I was just thinking, I saw that and I was like, why does it say that? Because I think they tell you things. Like before the attack in Israel, 2 days before that, the COVID variant was Eris. And Eris is the goddess of discord and chaos. Even COVID, see Ovid, angering the gods. Are they trying to anger the gods, which is just like the dimensions? Like you mentioned, time being a dimension. I just see gods as guardians of dimensions, one of which is time, Kronos, Saturn. Another is Pan, nature. And I think that the powers that be know how to work this flow, this energy in this realm. And that's what I think Operation Bluebeam is, to lower our frequency so that they're able to funnel this kind of more watery magic energy for their own means, for their own purposes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And you mentioned Eris. That's quite interesting, because there's also Eros, which is eroticism, right? The god of physical love. And then they did the social distancing. No contact between humans, no erotic connection at all. Can you imagine what that must have done for the dating world? Just think about it, like men and women not having access to each other because they're not allowed to. And like, you're hugging a strange woman, or family's going to come down on your head like you put us all at risk now. So that's quite interesting. And when we look at this, like we look at Project Bluebeam. Okay, so this is a modern. I remember, is his name Richard Spratt? That was the guy that I first learned about it, and that must have been like just after the turn of the century, of this like early thousands, 2003 was it? I don't know when Richard Spratt came onto the scene, but was it Project Camelot that first interviewed him? Could have well been. I think he was interviewed by a few different people, but I think it might have been Project Camelot, Ben Ryan and Eva Cassidy. that first interviewed him. I could be wrong about that. Seems like the same era. But anyway, he brought out a lot of the information. He was one of the engineers who'd worked on backward developing, like, aeronautical equipment, which was like blatantly not your run-of-the-mill technology. That he was like, what the hell? These are strange materials. We don't have these on the periodic table. I've studied engineering. I know what there is. So I look at it like from this perspective, like, where do temples come from? Okay, so what were temples protecting us from, right? And at some point, there were like these priests that sort of hijacked civilization, like a ruling caste. And they were there to protect us from who? The evil spirits, the demons, the dark deities, whatever you want to call them. So you got to stop and go, At some point, they were telling us, like, these evil guys are coming to get you. Unless you come here to this room, we can protect you with our magic called prayer and rituals. And we'll sacrifice this bull, and they will be appeased. They won't come and mess with us. So we'll be able to grow our corn or whatever we need to feed our children. So, like, when you look at it, like, how long has this drama been playing, where they've been playing off this invisible threat, right? It's coming to get you. And the threat's coming to get you. But, like, if you come to us and you do what we say, we can help you, protect you. And that's probably exactly what this whole story is about, right? It's like, you guys are going to be out there, you're going to be in trouble, but don't worry. We can protect you. We can give you an implant that will protect you from these guys. And if they try to come near you, we'll know and we'll be able to come and protect you. Can you see how that could go? People becoming afraid that they're going to get abducted or whatever. Well, if they got an implant, it's like there's like a instant service where drones will just come, right? A whole lot of military drones will come and, like, hone in on your position and protect you from invisible ET threats. You can see how this can be used. And it's like, it all comes back down to control, which is what the original priest class was doing. They were getting us to go to their churches or their temples, do what they tell us, give them our money, our food, our resources, whatever it was, pray to them, pray to whoever they, and do what they tell us, allow them to dictate how Earth will be moved forward. And I really think that there are other beings. I don't think that the Project Bluebeam is a lie, but I think it's a lie that stems from a truth that's used as a lie to hide the truth through confiscation. Like, I do believe that there are other beings out there that are hijacking us, but I don't think they come with crude weapons flying through the sky, zapping us with little zappers. I think they've got a far more efficient form of technology called social networking and governance and politicization and media and news and mind control techniques, psyops techniques. Like, if you're in an advanced planet with advanced technology, why would you go and fight a war to damage infrastructure, to damage the people that you want to use as slaves, when you could just get into their heads and make them worship you like your gods? You see, like, here we go again. Like, who were we worshiping? Who was Baal? Who was Jael? Who was Molech? Who were all of these beings that came here and we worshiped them? Like, were they invasions? But the invasion comes and says, listen, these bad guys are coming to get you, but we'll protect you. It's like the mafia. They rock up at your shop and they say, hey, you need to pay protection. Otherwise, we can't protect you. There's other gangs out there, So you're paying the mafia to keep you safe from the mafia.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these kind of things like Operation Bluebeam and fake alien invasion happen when the powers that be are losing control, because people are becoming more aware of what's going on. Like, the veil is being lifted. We're in a kind of transition period, especially now, the year being a 9 and a snake. The snake is symbolic of rebirth and it sheds its skin. and then next year would be number 10, which is like X, and you've seen X everywhere, and sort of that would be associated with like new beginnings and stuff. But it's interesting you say temple, because if you split that, it's kind of temp and L, like a temperature, or like a Mercury or messenger of the gods, and then L. And I think that obviously in temples, that's where you commune with gods. And it's interesting that Israel are trying to build a third temple now, or rebuild the third temple, because when I hear that, I just think of the mind, not a temple in a distant land. They're trying to reshape our brains. Might sound a bit far out to some people, but you can tell that people's perception is being altered by a lot of these AI companies, where the owners or founders or CEOs are what they claim to be Jewish. They're not. They're not actually Jewish. They're probably like Sabbateans, or they worship different gods to ones most people have heard of. I would say it's probably more like Ahriman, but it's just very interesting, and there's lots of threads back to the state of Israel with this AI rebuilding this temple. Red heifers as well that they were sacrificing. In my mind's eye, I was just thinking red herring. Like there needs to be a distraction. We need to be distracted for these lower entities or whatever to enter our minds, so we can be easier to control. And with space as well, and Bluebeam, they want us looking outwards, like into space, like what's out there, what's up there. They don't want us going inwards. And I think with communicating telepathically, we don't do it outwards. We do it by going inwards. Like you do it with feeling. For example, saying someone, hey, how's it going? Yeah, good. You? Thanks. Cool. Yeah, bye. It's like you don't need to ask somebody how they are to know how they are. You can see how people are by feeling how they are, by going inwards. And I have a theory that this world could be the Ark. This story of the flood and Noah's Ark, and that what's going on up there is a projection. Possibly what's here is a hologram or whatever. It's not real, because we are all real. But just how this realm operates is not mechanical, but it's kind of like holographic. It's kind of like this, like there's water everywhere, which is like memory and information. And I think that when we, slight tangent here, but when we die, when we pass on, I'd like to get your perspective on this. Is we don't go outwards, we don't go up into space, we go inwards, and our pineal is a portal that when we die, our light or our essence goes around our brain, fires around in like 7 seconds, whatever. And that's why we have our life flash before us. And the gods or the archons or the guardians of dimensions are in our own mind. Like Anubis weighing the heart and the feather, that's just our judgment of ourselves. It's not an external force judging us, it's ourself. And I think that when our spark or our light, it doesn't go up outside of our body. I think it goes into our pineal, which is a portal, which is obviously inwards and in our temple. And this is the whole reason why they want to cloud our pineal, to not really teach us about it, to calcify it, to make it harder to transcend this realm, because this seems to be like a middle way, like a vortex, the heart of somewhere, like so yeah, I'd like to get your view on the pineal, and do you think it relates to the afterlife and a portal, so to speak?
It's very interesting. When you were saying that, I was trying to think something that made me actually Google, like, where exactly in relation to the hypothalamus is the serotonin stored. Now, I can't speak for all, but it makes sense to me. Look, when I was little, I drowned. And what I remember was this juice being squirted out, like almost in the back part in the center of my head. Like this I felt this squirt sensation. And all this juice came out. I literally felt my head, like all this fluid came out. Felt it squirting. Because like my body was like, drowning is very painful. Every muscle spasms at the same time. You've had a muscular spasm before and you know it's pretty sore, right? Now imagine every muscle in your body spasming at the same time. That's like when the water hits your lungs. It's extreme agony. And so that little juice in the top of the head squirted out. And so that made me become aware of like this. I started to shake and vibrate until I shook loose of my body. And then I was just vibrating more and more and more and more and more. And you're right, like it seemed like the universe turned inside out. It seemed like when at the moment of shaking outside of my body, the universe did this like a wobble, and it was inside out. And it was very disorienting because I was like, wow, like it's inside out. Like I thought it was that way around. No, it's that way around. The whole universe, everything we think about the universe is the other way. Everything's like inverted. And then it feels like you're going up, but you're actually going towards the center. So you're actually going inwards towards the center because it's turned inside out, but your center is up. Does that make sense? So it's like a very weird, and I was 3 years old, so I didn't know about religion or any of that rubbish. It was like an organic experience of just like I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know I was going to drown. Like, you know, I didn't know what drowning was. I didn't even know what living and not living was. It's just like next experience. I was like, damn, I can't breathe. Water. And then I tried to hold my breath as long as I could. And that's why the extreme agony was so bad. Because when I finally let the breath out, it felt like my lungs collapsed, exploded. So, and then that whole journey towards it's like you feel like you're encased in something. And the first thing that I realized was that, like, when I got to that place where there's the light, you start to go through this, like, it's almost like a fishbowl, that you're coming through a fishbowl constellation, like a portal, and you're going into the light, and you're suddenly remembering, over there is where I came from. Damn. And the first thing that I thought, because now I'm thinking like an adult, I'm 3 years old, now I'm thinking like an adult, which is very strange because I was thinking like a 3-year-old. And then before then, your memories get pulled out of your head. It's like these 3 things that get pulled separately. And you notice like the whole thing's spinning. You're looking at the universe spinning. And there's these 3 things unraveling as you're watching them unravel. And then you realize those are your memories. That's the scary part. Like, oh God, those are my memories. Like, that's my father, everybody I know, I'm going to forget. So you know that you can see your memories unraveling. You notice that the universe is spinning really fast around these memories. So the whole universe is just created out of memory. And it's an illusion. And
Would you say it's a memory or stories? Or are memories?
I don't know. I was just, no, literally memories. Like I was watching the memories unravel, and then the memory of my father was being taken away from me. And I fought it with all my heart. So I didn't want to forget my dad. But then I forgot. everything. Like you have to forget everything to go to the next thing. And then when you're going through that translation, then all those memories being taken is the 3-year-old me taken away. Now I'm who I was before I was born. Does that make sense? So the memory of who I think I am and all of that gets taken away. And now I'm an adult again. And in my adult consciousness, I'm remembering where I come from. And I'm realizing that very clear thought, brother. They tricked me and us. And I'm trying to figure out, how did they trick me to get me stuck in this place? So first thing I'm thinking, as I'm going through this life. Now, I didn't know anything about anything. There was no religious dogma or indoctrination at 3 years old. I hadn't learned to read or write or anything. I'd spent all my time on my own, just looking out of windows. So I was very natural in myself. And so anyway, that has stayed with me my whole life. So when you talk about this place being a false matrix, that's what drove me to become a shaman. Recognizing that when I died. And then coming back into my body, because I saw Ricky going to fetch my body out of the swimming pool. I was like yanked back, like this little portal appeared. Then coming back into my body, but now I'm an adult, not a child in my body, but I've got a small body. But I'm now thinking like that person that I was after my memories of being a 3-year-old was taken away. So then I'm like trying to adjust to this world, fully aware that this world's not real, fully aware that death is an illusion, fully aware that everybody else is stuck and trapped in this illusion and that they can't see it, and that this whole thing is just a big scam. And I couldn't play with other children, so I would like draw a circle and sit in my circle and meditate. And the teachers thought I was like crazy until they came to talk to me, and then I would have conversations with them about like life and death and existence and why we're here and why are you afraid of dying and why can't you play with the children? And I'm like, they're rolling around in the dirt. Why don't you roll around in the dirt? She was like, oh, well, I'm an adult. I'm saying, well, but why don't you do it? Why should I do it? Look at them. Their noses are dribbling. They're rolling on the floor. They're a mess. Why would you do that? It's like, I'm sitting here contemplating the nature of existence and why we're here. You telling me I should be there rolling around in the dirt. So, but this makes me think, like, that's my perspective. And so I think Gnosticism has been unfairly dismantled by woke kids that have no business talking about Gnosticism. And a very clear and very powerful PSYOP movement has given us particular translations of Gnostic texts in order to confuse us so that we have this weird idea of Gnosticism. And then they've got all the TikTokers and YouTube, the youngsters that are like, basically woke, very woke kids, to just come and talk about it because they're not really thinking, right? They're like on a bandwagon. Like that one said it, now I'm saying it. Now it's to them, it's about getting like subs, and that's what I'm getting. Like they're not. They saw, oh, that person did this, I'm going to do this video too. And so you see these young people talking about Gnosis and the Gnosticism, and so it's become like identified as that. But I think that that's the biggest woke agenda, and I think it's one of the biggest psyops is trying to brainwash us about what Gnosis is, because Emmanuel was a Gnostic teacher teaching Gnosis, and Gnosis is where Christianity came from. And if we recognize the true source of Gnosis, we're going to knock Christianity on its back. And when we do that, we're going to start knocking all the world religions on their back, because they all come from Gnosis. and we're going to start looking at like what are these stories about Yaldabaoth, and is the Tetragrammaton, or who we call Yahweh, is that really Yaldabaoth? Have we been worshipping a false deity all these eons? That's my thought.
Yep. Oh, there's a lot to unpack there. Just going back to like the memories and when you died. Do you think that water or like memory is a barrier we have to cross? Like the waters above and the waters below. Because I've heard from a few places that like to pass the archons, that the hourcons and the hourcons, the construct of time, you have to tell them a story. You have to, I guess, telling a story is to have an identity as well, which would be the bar, which reminds me of barrier. But is it important to have like memories, like a strong sense of a person or a will of who you are to when you cross over? Because in that way you'll be less likely to be tricked into being recycled if you know who you are, where you've come from, and where you want to be going. That's what I've thought about that. And then just quickly on the illusion and the Maya, or like mother or matrix. And like with Gnosticism has been given a bad rap. People don't really know what it is. They think that the Gnostics think this is just a prison planet, but I think it's more of a prism. It's just where light comes in and where light goes out. It should be a vortex. Like water's happiest when it's spinning. But the energies become quite stagnant. And I think like with Sophia and the Demiurge, it sort of seems to be happening with AI, because Sophia is sort of this Gaia or Earth goddess archetype, and it's like AI is coming from the Earth. It's like this AI or Ahrimanic force, not AI, there's more of an Ahrimanic force is using AI, and it's not coming down into matter, but it's coming through matter, if that makes sense. Like there aren't beings coming through like from space or anywhere. They're coming through matter, like, and then via light, I guess. And then with Emmanuel, you mentioned, whenever I hear that name, I always think of like a manual, you know, like how to do something, like how to do life. Like Emmanuel is just like an energy manual. It's like if you follow a manual, you'll understand how this realm works and how to navigate it. And then, yeah, he was certainly a Gnostic, not a Jew or a Christian or anything else. And I've come up with a term recently. I don't think I've heard it before, but technosis, which is something I'm trying to work on to be able to teach people, because what's really helped me, don't like to use the word enlightenment, but literally what that word means is for your mind to be lighter. And I think that what's helped my mind be lighter with like all these like remembering all this information, looking into ancient history, language, symbols and stuff, using technology, which is just language and symbols, and how we interface with each other, with our own psyche, and source via technology and symbols, which are just frequencies, language and symbols, is it's really helped break down some barriers and open new doorways in my own mind. So yeah, it's a shame that Gnosticism has got such a bad rap, and I think that's all part of the psyop too, to stop people going inwards, look outwards, and even further to the Father who's in the sky, and then just wait for Jesus to come back, and everything will be fine. You know, don't work on yourself. Just wait for God's only Son to come back, and everything will be hunky dory.
Yeah, brother, I think that's like so on point. I was just messaging Stein a moment ago. I saw him in the chat. He's joining in a second.
Is he awesome? I was supposed to be doing in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
So,
I just messaged him and told him there were like technical issues, so we're doing a multi-stream, so he must just be logged into his YouTube because then it can.
So is he joining yours? So should we just do a show together?
Joining this? Well, this is ours. This is not one person. This is like a multi.
Sweet.
This is we're live on your YouTube, my YouTube,
cool. Awesome.
LinkedIn, Facebook, and whatever YouTube and whatever else Stein's gonna. So we're gonna be like to a lot of locations.
Okay, awesome.
We're all over the web.
Super stream.
Yeah, Uber stream. But I was, you know, what you were saying was, yeah, big love, Stein brother. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. You know, I had a thought in my mind. Oh yes. You were talking about barrier and water. To get back to the point, and so the bar ear, right?
Ear, earth, right?
Yo.
Hey Stein.
Namaste. How you doing, dear Stein brother?
All good. Just trying to see if I can connect this to my my channel as well. And I guess we'll just do it here.
Yeah, he was able to do it in the studio here, so you should be able to. You just got to make sure that you're logged in on your YouTube, and I think you got 2 destinations.
Yeah, I am. I'm working on that at the moment, so should be.
Yeah, we should all be switching to OBS Studios. We know that, right? All of us.
OBS.
You know, OBS is the most solid system, the solid stream. Did you know that? They have the least amount of issues and disruptions. Okay, he dropped off. I'm sure he'll be back. There we go. You're back.
Yes. No.
So yeah, OBS is the most solid form of streaming. I didn't know that until I actually did my research. They have less issues, less glitches, less problems with audio, less problems with video stream. Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed StreamYard sometimes has issues.
I don't use StreamYard. I use Riverside.
Oh, you use Riverside. Okay, is Riverside good?
It's, well, first of all, it's cheaper, and they have like a well, let's say an in-house editor, so I can like do basic. I mean, I can
StreamYard does that too.
Create a full video within StreamYard, but I mostly use it to like clear up the audio, you know, like edit out some of the ums and uhs, and I use it a lot for my audio as well, because it makes it really easy to like cut out reviews.
Can I share something with you?
Sure.
Stream Elements is set up to go into my TikTok live.
Okay. Stream Elements.
So next time when I do roundtables using Stream Elements through my OBS, I'll be streaming to TikTok as well.
Nice.
And it's so easy to set up. You don't even have that on all these other platforms. Do you know how hard it is to get third-party streaming rights to TikTok?
Yeah.
Well, Stream Elements did it for me like that. It's open source.
Nice.
So now I've got TikTok added.
The Stream
It's
Elements
free.
is really good. Like Stream Elements, OBS, I'm definitely hearing good stuff about it. Like, I mean, any like half decent streamer, mostly like game streamers and such, use OBS because of its versatility.
Yeah, you can control your bit rate. You can control everything.
Yeah, and I have bought a green screen, so I really wanna use that, and OBS
You
really
bought a
is
green
the,
screen. How much did that cost you?
too much.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know actually.
Hopefully not too much, because you can get them off Amazon, I'm sure, for like 20 quid. You know?
Yeah, but
Is that
I bought a real
Oh,
one,
cheap.
you know.
Okay, yeah.
Well, where were we? We were talking about this and the water thing. So we were talking about like passing from life, going through the water element and barrier. And I looked at the word bar. So bar from Hebrew means the son of, right? Son of Ea, Baria. Son of Ea. Ea is the Lord of the waters.
Oh, I was muted. Yeah, so the bar is the soul and the car is the spirit. So the soul, another name for the sun as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because bar also means son, like the child of. And so the soul, the child of something like the soul is the child of the spirit, if that makes sense. So barrier could mean child of the waters. And that like has got to do with aspects of ourselves that are born through water. Isn't that interesting? The whole idea of baptism, you know? And what I do remember is that I was moving through this fluid. And I remember distinctly feeling like there's a weird substance of moving through when I was going towards that like portal. When I entered into the portal, it was like the substance was gone. There was resistance. I was moving through something that created resistance on my form. Yeah. And when I was older and I projected out of my body, and the most vivid and powerful projection I had out of my body, well, there've been a couple of them like this, but you can project out of your body with your eyes open. Yeah. You can leave your body while you're awake without closing your eyes. And you can leave through your eyes. And you can create an image that you project through, like a geometric, a yantra. And the yantra starts to spin and become vortices of color and energy. And then you literally leave your eyes and you go through that vortice and you travel out, and then you feel like you're surfing through water, but it's like it's silver. You guys have surfed, right? Well, when you're surfing, I don't know I don't know what the sea are like where you are, but yeah, we've got like dangers not too far where there's a perfect tube. If you get inside a tube, it's like the water does this. It's like a sound. It's like this loud sound around your ears, and you're inside the wave, and you're being bulleted, shot through like a tube, and you accelerate as the tube's pushing from behind, because it's doing this. It's like scrunching like a cloth, and as it scrunches, it puts pressure on your board, and you feel your board's like vibrating. You're going so fast through that tube, and it's pretty cool to be inside a tube. Tube riding is the best. The noise in there is incredible, because all the acoustics of the water moving, you hear this weird kind of sounds inside there. And so anyway, it felt like that. Like I was surfing through this fluid that seemed like it was silver, but it was fluid. It was like water It was like water when the moon is shining on the water at night, and it's like silver, right? If you're by a lake or a dam or something, and the moon is rising, and there's like the silver sheen. It was like surfing through that stuff, and you're surfing through like a tube, through this liquid substance out there. So that is like what surrounds the world.
Could that be like the silver thread which ties us to a higher self? For, you know,
I never saw that thread in my life.
Right.
And
people talk about that thread.
There's a.
I've never seen the thread. I've been like swimming through weird substance. Swimming more like surfing. And the stuff is transforming around you, it's swirling. And as you move through it, you can move really, really fast. You can project, because you're not moving with your body, you're moving with your thoughts. And you can like move like succinctly through this thing. And it's like you become like a serpent. You're moving fast through this substance, like surfing. It feels like you're surfing underwater. It's really a cool sensation.
Nice.
It can get a bit addictive.
What were you going to say?
But, hey?
No, that there is this this character, of course, in the Marvel universe, the Silver Surfer, who has these cosmic powers, including superhuman strength, flight via a surfboard-like craft, interdimensional travel, energy manipulation, and the power to create pocket universes. Like that, it made me think about that right away. Which is, you know, like you talk about Silver and Silver Lake and Silver Surfing and all of that. It's like, you know, these guys at Marvel who create these characters, they are onto something for sure.
Yeah, there was also the Loki TV series, which Slick and Chance dissected brilliantly. I'm not sure if you guys saw the series.
No, not.
I learned so much to do with etymology from those guys during that. But there was obviously Loki, who was part of the TVA, which is to do with like the time lords or time guardians, and they go up and down elevators to go to different dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And they're basically chasing after Loki, who's trying to escape, and he always turns up during the apocalypse. But the female Loki was called Silver, and Quicksilver is like Mercury, messenger of the gods. So then that's what made me think of the Silver Surfer opening new dimensions and traveling between worlds.
Pocket dimensions.
Yeah, like the trickster would. Going between worlds, you know.
Yeah, so this interesting about this water phenomenon, isn't it, with baptism and the jinn? So traditionally, people from Arabic culture, traditionally in the Zoroastrian time, they wouldn't use water at night because they believe that brings the jinn into their reality. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Water.
Just quickly on water and the trickster. At some point during our conversation, because we never know where it's going to go, I'd like to talk about Pan, if you guys are down for that. Pan and the trickster archetype, because I think the trickster archetype is so important at the moment. Like Pan, the devil, the trickster, even Enki, like this kind of more water energy. It's more of a kind of watery, which we've been tricked into thinking it's the fiery god, because I sent something over to you yesterday, Stein. It was Maui, the demigod, was the god that, or a demigod that brought fire to humanity, like Prometheus, but he wasn't the fire god himself. Because, and then also we had with the Maui fires the blue beam direct energy weapon, because all of the blue things, parasols, cars, are all fine. So it's definitely a blue beam. and the frequency of blue is 6.66. So there you have your mark of the beast, which is blue. And it's interesting that Maui, the island, got burnt because that is the trickster archetype, and the trickster archetype is under attack from the deceiver, because people think that the trickster is Satan, and I think Satan is the deceiver, and that Lucifer, Pan, this trickster archetype, isn't inherently evil. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that. And then also Pan being cast out of, like Pan dying or being cast out of heaven, like Lucifer was cast out of heaven, which is the mind. I'd like to get your guys' take on that at some point if you're up for.
Well, I think that's really interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is panpsychism. And I think like this brings us to an interesting point, like the whole idea of panpsychism. And I don't mean the version of panpsychism that is popularized by the localized scientific community. I mean panpsychism as it relates to specifically the idea that physical reality and mental reality are fundamentally connected, and they are an expression of each other. And our scientists, which are coming from the perspective of a mechanized physical reality, want us to believe that the psychic mental reality is an emanation of the physical reality. But the more traditional idea is that the physical manifestational reality is an emanation from the inner mental reality. And so this panpsychism sort of brings us back to that idea. So then when I look at Pan, Pan represents nature. So Pan, in my mind, also represents the green man. And when we look at the green man, I'm looking at Saturn, the original green man, the original reaper of corn. So Saturn was originally an agricultural deity like Pan that represented the abundance of food and bringing to us corn and wheat. And then he had the scythe, which was the crescent, which was for reaping the corn. And then he was also sometimes called the reaper because the reaping holidays were dedicated to the green man. And I think Pan, the green man, and Saturn are all the same deity that has been transformed through different epochs of time to fit different needs. So that's my idea when I go to the idea of Pan. And the idea of Pan as well then relates to our original shamanic cultural legacies, where we identified everything with the natural kingdom, animals, animal deity, animal guides, tree worship, understanding like groves of trees, which is where I think the original stone circles come from. What if the stone circles were originally tree circles that petrified? How's that for something to think about?
That's a good one. And also, according to Wikipedia, and I find this quite interesting, Pan, the god Pan, the ancient Greek one, is the god of the wild, shepherds, and flocks. So he is also, in a way, he is a shepherd himself. And I do wonder, like, we've heard so many times, like, who is the shepherd, and we are his flock. So I'm curious, how would that connect to the one that we are always told is the shepherd? Because it is, to my knowledge at least, the image that we have of the devil with hooves as hind legs and horns and whatever, like that is basically Pan. But Jesus is supposed to be the shepherd, but Pan is like really is the god of the wild, god of the shepherds, god of the flocks. So he's like even one step above that. So would it be for that reason that he's been turned into the image of Satan, if you will? And he's also associated, this is another good one, with the mother goddess, which is either Rhea or Cybele.
Yeah, I always view Pan as more of a feminine energy rather than a masculine.
Sure.
And my reason for that is because nature, or like the earth, is more of a feminine. Like it has more water and earth than air and fire. And obviously Pan was a god of fresh water. Water is more of a feminine like energy quality. So I just find it interesting that obviously Pan's always seen as like a masculine, like Pan, like he kind of thing. And also you mentioned Christ or Yeshua being like a shepherd also. There was there's lots of crossovers between Pan, Prometheus, Pandora, Lucifer, Yeshua, Enki. They all seem to be bringers of light, like Pandora, opening the box. Pandora just meaning all doors of our mind. Can't have that. Sounds very similar to Eve, taking a bite of the tree of knowledge or of good and evil, opening our minds. Can't have that. Got to be in subconscious still. And obviously Christ, he was known as the light of the world. Obviously he taught a lot of wisdom and stuff. And then you have Pan being turned into the devil, which people view the goat head or the ram, which is the ram is associated, I guess, with Aries, is associated with the mind, but also it's associated with the heart chakra, the ram. It's Yam. Apparently you chant Yam to unlock your heart chakra, which I find very similar to a ram. But also Yam was the god of the sea, much like Poseidon was, who would be another god of water. But yeah, what else did I want to say? There's something important I wanted to bring up. Pan was the only Greek god to die, and apparently he died around, let's say he died around AD 14 to 37, and Yeshua died between AD 30 to 36. So both Pan and Christ died at the same time. I find that very interesting because it seems that the same time that Christ's consciousness or Yeshua died, we were more disconnected from nature. Like there was more kind of grid-like structure from the Romans, like the Romans casting all the snakes out of Ireland, which would have been the pagans or the wisdom or the shamans. All of these kind of like straight roads. And yeah, I just find it interesting. I think Pan and Christ, they are interlinked. The same with Enki, who apparently implanted our pineal gland or gave us the ability to transcend. So yeah, there's lots of crossovers between these archetypes. And just quickly on Saturn or Kronos, that Prisus, I think was his name, was the son of Kronos, and he was a sea goat, which is the constellation Capricorn.
Yeah.
And Enki is also being pictured as being a sea goat too. So it's very interesting that the son of Kronos, Prisus, was a sea goat, same as Enki. And Enki and Enlil's father was Anu, which would be Saturn. And Saturn has two poles. One is the hex, which is structured water, which is more of like a magnetic north. watery, and the south is an eye, which is more observed or quantitative. So I view the North Pole, the magnetic, as Enki, the water, the more flow or kairos time, more of flow. And I view the eye on the South Pole as Enlil, the big brother, observing the more masculine air, god of the wind archetype, because there's always two polarities and they're one in the same. The story of the two brothers, the sort of sparring between the trickster and the deceiver, Satan, Ahriman, and Lucifer, you know.
Yeah, I think that that's very interesting, you know, especially when we look at Pan. His association, he's the goat man, isn't he? And got a couple of images here. And he was always sort of depicted as being related to goats, which is quite interesting. And that relation to goats. There's also another element. I mean, look at his feet, right? So this is like nature's representation. And it sort of brings me to a point, that's something that I wanted to make a point of sharing as well, is the idea that the first animals that were brought to earth were goats and sheep, which I find quite interesting. Now we equate Emmanuel, and they use the word lamb. But I wonder whether, like, how can we rely on these translations? It makes so much more sense, right? So, okay, let's just look at this, right? So, Saturnalia was originally worshipped, right? So, what we have inherited are Saturn holidays, yeah? Just to be clear. So Saturnalia would have been the harvest festival. When would have been the traditional December the 17th was the beginning of Saturnalia. Now we're looking at Emmanuel, the whole celebration of Christmas. That's the Saturnalia tradition, which is celebrating goats, just to be clear. And the goat is Saturn's emblem. It's his epithet. Pan's epithet is the goat. Pan has got the horn, the horns of the goat as well. And he's got the pipes. Now, the pan pipes make me think of Krishna, because his pan pipes are like literally playing the vibrations of the universe. So the pan pipes make me think about time and space, you know, coordinating the dance of life, the pan pipes, the dance of nature, the rhythm, the principle of rhythm, the fifth hermetic principle of rhythm regulates all of these rhythms, and time is related to rhythm, because rhythm is how time moves. So I think of Pan, I think of Saturn, I think of the goat. Then I think of Emmanuel being equated to a lamb, which doesn't make sense. He inherited the holiday of Saturn, Saturnalia, goats were being sacrificed, right? Then we look at this as well and we go, well, isn't it interesting that the people from whence the tradition of Judaism was being carried from more ancient sources, their sacred day was Saturn. Okay, Saturn, Saturday, Shabbat. Shabbat means, Shabbatai is the word for the Saturn. Shabbat is the word Saturday. Shabbat begins Friday sunset, our time, till Saturday sunset, our time. In the old Jewish lunar calendars, the day begins with sunset. So Saturn is the Sabbath. So the Christians changed that to Sunday. Okay, interesting. So the original Sabbath that Emmanuel used to keep in the Bible when he speaks about celebrating the Sabbath with his disciples was Saturn Day, the day of the goat. And so you can see where we're going here. Has there been a mispronunciation when we speak about the lamb? Is that a linguistic thing? Is that a language thing? Because it stands more reason that there's a goat. So I think like it adds more credence to what you're saying, Shinobi, about Emmanuel's connection with Pan, connection with the goat. And it also, like, it begs the question, why did Pan have to become the emblem of the devil with these goat's feet, right? Because the early church then demonized Pan. And so they demonized Pan, they had to demonize goats, didn't they? Because you can't demonize Pan when he's half goat. He's a goat man. So goats had to then be associated with evil, which is Saturn, which ironically is the Sabbath. You see, there's so many holes in this whole propaganda engine of the Torah. Please.
What I think has happened, I'll just say really quickly so you can jump in, Stein, is that I think that they've tricked us into not looking into Saturn, because Saturn governs time and space and boundaries. And I think it's a very powerful archetype. And the Sabbateans don't want us using the power of the Baphomet, the as above, so below. They want to scare us from looking into Pan, looking into Enki, looking into this sort of goat head, which represents wisdom. And I think they've tricked us into fearing this. Like the Baphomet is called the devil or Lucifer when it represents wisdom. People call Lucifer Satan. And Saturn, like I said, has two poles. It has two potentials. It can either be like its metal is lead, but another way you say lead is to lead. And Capricorn is known as a leader. Goats climb to the top of the mountain. I think that Saturn is a very powerful energy. Saturn isn't Kronos. Saturn is chronological, or it could be flow time. Like when you're in a flow state, time moves differently. They want us to be constricted. They want us to think that it's only Kronos. They want us to think that these people worship Saturn, which they do, which we should probably be in alignment with also. But they've separated us from these gods, guardians of dimensions, that is, of which Saturn is the guardian of time, the fourth dimension. So these people, these dark sorcerers, are very clever because they've sort of managed to funnel our energy and take it for themselves. But I really don't view Saturn as bad. It's boundaries, which is good. Water is a boundary, but also to observe can go beyond boundaries. So yeah, I think people need to start looking at Saturn in a different way. Like the Greeks had another word for time, which was kairos, which is a bit like Mercury, messenger of the gods, Quicksilver. But, so yeah.
You were, Shinobi, you were talking about how you feel like Pan is more of a feminine energy, and that made me think of the Baphomet, actually, who is, of course, the perfect alchemical being. And if you apply the Judaic cipher to the name Baphomet, you come to Sophia, who is the ultimate mother goddess, of course. Yeah. And Lamb made me think of something else. I do love the occult, as many know. That was also a spiritual entity, if you will, that kind of looked like a gray alien that was channeled by the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. And like it is, I'm not sure if it like gave itself the name Lamb, or that is just the name that it goes by, but it was supposed to be some sort of demonic entity, which, as I said, like really resembled a gray alien. Now, I do know that there are, I believe, some incredibly far-fetched theories that, God or Jesus or whoever is not of this earth. And That's also, of course, going into the supposed galactic council, which is a council of alien races that are the I guess the true guardians of the galaxy, if you will. It's nice how they bastardize that. Go Marvel, $1 billion business with shitty CGI. There's so much, but like going back to Baphomet, at the same time, Baphomet is also kind of a light bringer, like because of the torch that sits between the horns. It is the the ultimate light. It is the fire brought to man by was that Prometheus? No, who was the firebringer again? I believe Prometheus.
Well, there's many. Maui was one, and Prometheus was another.
Yeah,
all around the world they have different names.
Yeah. So just it really has like so many occult tie-ins as well, and I never imagined being able to tie in Crowley to this, who of course like loved Egypt and everything like Egyptian occult, also going into the Hermetic traditions. Of course, it is. Yeah, there's so much, and you could. I guess in a way you could even say that Crowley himself was kind of a trickster. It's still not entirely sure, of course, whether he was the real deal or just like really, really good at faking it. I needed to get all of that out. Oh, and this is another thing. What's the deal with caves? Like I'm seeing here, at least on Wikipedia, that being a rustic god, Pan was not worshipped in temples or built edifices, but in natural settings, usually caves or grottos. Always caves, and like for example in Mithraism, it's mostly worshipped in caves. You have Plato's cave as a theory, of course, or as a not a theory, more of a teaching, really. Mithras being the bull slayer. There's another, horned animal, if you will, connected to a deity or deified entity. It's crazy how it all really connects together, and how you can connect like all the dots together in just like one or two lines. So just curious, what do you like?
It's very interesting.
No, please.
Sorry, brother, carry on.
No, I'm done. I'm just really curious as to what you guys think of it.
I like what you point out about the Baphomet, because I think that Baphomet was Oedipus Levi's own rendition of Pan. In other words, for the next epoch generation, because Pan was an older idea, and Oedipus Levi, being of the church, right, being a church person, would have wanted to distance himself from Pan because of the pantheons that the church was opposed to. So he needed to create a new version of Pan that could be accepted and not be ridiculed by the church. Baphomet. He was like, it'll take them a while to figure out what Baphomet is before they can tell you excommunicated. Like, they've got 10 years on the clock by the time they like do the research and go, no, this Baphomet's too much like Pan. But I think like there's a lot in that. I want to bring a focus here, and it's a slight little bit of a junction But I think it's well worth it, and I think it's an important point, and I'll tell you why. Because when we're looking at goats, where did goats and sheep come from? How did they get to this planet? I think there's like a very interesting story behind this. But I want to start off with, if you Google where did the idea come from that humanity was created by beings from Nibiru? And I just, for people to understand this, this is really important. So let's say I Google and I say, where did idea that humans were engineered by beings from Nibiru come from? You're going to be surprised what evidence I'm going to be able to. Okay. Okay, now they're talking weird nonsense here about eugenics. Very, very weird, because I didn't mention eugenics. I don't know how Google did that. Let's say by the Anunnaki, which obviously is a term. So yeah, they talk about how Zachariah Stitchin made up the story, and they readily go to debunk him, and there's so many experts who speak against him. Okay, so here I'm going to dig up a piece of ancient text for you guys. First, before we go to the ancient text, let's see who the guy behind translating this text is. So here we have Torek Peter Rudolf Jacobsen. He was a Danish guy, 1904 to 1993, right? He was a historian specializing in Assyriology and Sumerian literature. He was one of the foremost scholars of the ancient Near East. So let's let that sink in for a bit. He was one of the foremost scholars. Naturally, you know, he had an MA from Copenhagen University. He came to the USA. He studied at the Oriental Institute, and then was at the University of Chicago, where he got his PhD. He was the field Assyriologist for the Iraq expeditions of the Oriental Institute, which is a wing of Chicago University. He served as the Dean of Humanities Division from 1948 to 1951. So this guy was not some conspiracy theorist. He was not some nobody. He was the professor of Assyriology at Harvard University, right? Until he retired. He was considered an expert translator and a brilliant interpreter whose insights led to deeper understanding and appreciation of the institutions of normative references of Sumerian and Akkadian culture. Right, so now we know who the man he is who translated the manuscript I'm going to pull up now. Let's take a look at this manuscript. It gets very interesting, and this is going to sort of give us an insight into how we've been lied to by propaganda. So this is a text which is the translation of the Eridu Genesis, right? Now the Eridu Genesis is one of the tablets that's Stitchin translated, that he's been given so much flack for. So let's see what this experts. So here we can see this is the journal article, and this is his translation. This 1989 version was written by Torek Jacobsen and was where he coined the term Eridu Genesis. He actually named this particular tablet. So here are the bits. Now, some of the bits, there's missing 36 lines, which we can't see, which he couldn't decipher because they weren't complete. Then he's talking about how Nintur was paying attention. Let me bethink myself of my humankind, forgotten as they are and mindful of mine. So Nintur is basically speaking, and they're talking about how they came out of the cities, how she had given directions for purification and cries of quarter, and that they had to find special regions for the divination. When An, Enki, Enlil, and Nunhersaga fashioned the dark-headed people, they had made the small animals. And I want us to just stop and look at this, right? So this is this guy, right? This is this guy, Torik Jacobson's translation. Now understand that this translation was done in the 50s. And in those days, when you say the word fashioned, it meant created, right? That's what the word fashioned was used for in those days. So here we have him directly specifying that when An, Enlil, Enki, and Nun Hursaga, which is exactly the story in Stitchin's story, fashioned the dark-headed people, they had made the small animals that came up from out of the earth, come from the earth in abundance, and had let there be as benefits, gazelles, donkeys, four-footed beasts. And so what we've got is this habit of Stitchin being attacked by other so-called experts that never, ever present an alternative translation of the texts that they're knocking him for, right? Not once, ever, have I ever seen any of these experts ever produce an alternative translation of those tablets. They just say he's wrong. That's it. Yeah, he's just wrong. Blanket statement. Now we've got the premier guy who was like the top honcho of Harvard University and one of the most proclaimed and celebrated of Sumerian expert translators, translating one of those tablets, very clearly saying that humans were created by these guys. Isn't that interesting? It sort of forces one to actually go and question all this nonsense, woke propaganda we've heard. And now, you know, because one of the big times that they attack Stitchin for is they say that he made up this ridiculous story that humans were manufactured, right? Genetically modified or created by these beings. But here we're seeing actually this is not Stitchin's. This is legitimate translation from ancient tablets. These tablets this is the fourth tablet of Stitchin's set of tablets that he translates. So the biggest thing that he gets knocked for is actually validated. So you'll find most of those people, woke people, attacking him, saying, oh, he came up with this nonsense idea. It doesn't say that anywhere in the text. Actually, it does. We've just seen it. So the reason I point this out, I haven't had time to check all of the tablets that Stitchin released, but my gut and my instinct says that when I go into these rabbit holes, if I can find more valid translations, they're going to actually verify what he says. And then we're going to understand that there's a coordinated movement of so-called experts trying to discredit Stitchin, and we need to ask ourselves why. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Stitchin also says that the goats were brought to earth from Nibiru, specifically. Now, that to me seems like a piece of text that's very hard to misconstrue, right? Piece of text saying that they brought from their planet livestock consisting of sheep and goats. It's not open to that much interpretation.
Well,
right? It's not like sorry.
I'm just wondering if the goats could be kids, because obviously baby goats are called kids, but in the translation, could it have meant kids and not the actual animals, like all children were brought from Nibiru to here, or is it literally the animal?
That makes me think of the Pinocchio story of the island of what is it, like the island of pleasure, where kids are transformed into donkeys and sold off as working donkeys, which is like both magic and fucking human trade.
Yeah, well, also another name for donkey is arse as well. So I think there's something a bit darker to that whole analogy of the donkey. Also, Yahweh is associated with Set, who would be the donkey-headed god, the dark one.
That's interesting, because there was that's quite known actually. There's graffiti found, like fucking old graffiti of like some kid mocking another kid because he worships Christ, and the depiction is of Christ with a donkey's head. Let me see if I can actually find that.
This is very interesting because donkeys were considered very sacred in ancient times. And I think what you said as well a moment ago makes this a very interesting point as well. The idea of, Seth being related. We read about Seth in the Bible. Seth makes me think, there's something going on here. They're hiding truth linguistically behind words and recharacterizing certain ideas and people to embody certain beings. And maybe these beings were. But here's the interesting point, like if these donkeys, and isn't it interesting that they specifically mention that in that text, right? Which is really interesting. Gazelles, donkeys, four-footed beasts in the desert. And so when we look at this idea and this concept, so when we look at this concept of them bringing these animals here, and the word that you say, kid, relating to a baby goat, originally they were sacrificing the goats. It says in the Sumerian chronicles, in those tablets, that the humans would sacrifice goats to appease the deities. It says it in the Akkadian text. It says it in a lot of different places. So goats were offered. Then, at some point, the Semites were doing that with their eldest children, weren't they? That became a thing. Even Abraham was carrying on the practice of his forefathers, which was to take your firstborn child, strap them to a rock, get out a good old sharp blade, and get working on your boy. That was all done for the deities. So I find it interesting that at some point they were using goats, then they started using children, and then they probably went back to using goats. I wonder whether this is why we've got this linguistic connection between kid and kid. I've always wondered about that.
It's very interesting you bring up sacrificing the firstborn, because I think was Enki the firstborn before Enlil? Was Enki born first, but then Enlil took his birthright?
Hold on.
Because that would make a lot of sense to me, because with the epic with Esau and Jacob, I find a crossover there of Esau being born first, but Jacob tricking him out of his birthright. I think it's a similar story with Enki and Enlil.
And Romulus and Remus.
And many more. It's the two brothers, the two twins. It's the same essence, the same story. And also, as well, I'll mention Esau killed Nimrod. The Rothschilds claim to be of the line of Nimrod. The Prince William here is clearly Rothschild's son. So he would be Nimrod. And then you have Harry, who has red hair like Esau. Like I think Enki had red hair. He's more. I see him as more of a kind of Celtic sort of deity. I'm pretty sure Enki had red hair. I can't remember where I saw that. My point in this is that Esau married somebody which his father was against, so he didn't get his birthright. Enki married somebody, a concubine, who Anu didn't like, so he lost his birthright. Prince Harry here in the UK married Meghan, who isn't completely white. She's mixed race. So he was outcast of the royal family. And then you have the older brother, William, who's of the line of Nimrod. And there was a fight between Esau, the red-headed one, and Nimrod. I just find this all very interesting. There's similarities all through history and in the present day as well. Have you found whether Enki was the firstborn or not? Because I've seen information.
I believe Enlil was older. I double checked it because it made me doubt myself. I was like, no, Enlil was older. No, Enlil was the older one, but Enki made a claim. Now, there was this claim of birthright. This was why they were marrying their sisters, right? And this is quite like clearly explained in the first of the series of tablets of the story of Enki, which was that on their planet they had wars, and after the wars, the North and the South were separated. And then the North and the South made a treaty. And that treaty was like, one of your people will marry one of my people. You know, that old story, we've done it on Earth a lot of times. And their marriage and union would join our two cultures and we could become one people, one planet, peace. All of that nonsense. Well, you know, that idea. And then those offspring started marrying other people. But then at some point, in order to keep the bloodline pure, the brothers and the sisters started getting married and having children in order to have the purest bloodline of that original bloodline of An. And of the bloodline of An, who was the first king. So then they brought about this new regulation about if you marry your sister, that child has more right to the kingship than if you don't. Now, I'm not sure exactly, but Enki he was also better trained. Enki was more intelligent. He was one of the profound engineers. He had a lot of ancient knowledge more than Enlil. So he had agreed to go to Earth first. That's why he was the original. He was originally Ea, and he became Ea Anu Ki. Ea of Anu, Lord of Ki, Earth. So Ea of Anu, Lord of Earth. Ea Anu Ki. Ea-Anu-Ki, Ea-Anu-Ki, Enki. So that's like three epithets put together. But so yeah, it was when he went to Earth, he went with all that knowledge of how to mine the gold. And he was the guy who was the preeminent engineer who was going to figure out how to get the gold out of the earth. He was also a developer and a scientist. That was why he was the first overlord of Earth, until he couldn't get the gold fast enough. And his brother then complained to his father and said, I'm the eldest. I should be in charge. Why didn't you send me? I'll sort it out for you. So then Enlil got sent to Earth. And then when he arrived, he took over lordship of Earth, at which point Ea-Anu-Ki got stripped of the title Ki, and he became Ea once more. This is why the later texts of the Akkadians once again call Ea-Ki Ea, because without that title he was once again just Ea. And so Enlil would have then been Enlil-Lanuki, you know, of Anu, Lord of Earth. So I think that's how it worked. And we still to this day used to speak about like Sir John, Lord of, or son of, you know, Henry, ruler of England. It was sort of how we used to use titles.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of that.
Yeah, it seems like
carry on.
There's a cosmic drama here that's always playing out, because I see Enki as associated more with the heart. And the reason for that is that the heart is an anagram of the earth. The heart chakra is a hexagram, which is structured water. Enki was a god of fresh water and the earth. And Enlil being the god of the wind, the mind. So you have one of the mind, and one of the heart. And I think our hearts and our minds are always at war. And I think now in the world, the energy of Enki or Pan is being suppressed, and the energy of Enlil, the wind, the mind, AI, Ahriman, is strong in the world. And I think that we've spoken before about this, Steinforks, is that AI is a tool, and then to use it, we have to be wise, which is a balance of the mind and the heart, the knowledge and the intuition. But they've managed to suppress our intuition, stop us going inwards. So we look outside for guidance. And I think that AI is a tool. It's not evil. It's not the Antichrist. AI is not this evil thing. It's just a tool. But we're being manipulated because there's not much wisdom to be found in the world. From my perspective, there's a lot of knowledge, but there's not much intuition that people have. So yeah, and also I'll quickly mention the two brothers. Another one is that Ahura Mazda and Angry Manu in Zoroastrianism, like they were birthed from Zervan, cosmic time, Zervan, Anu, Ahura Mazda, Enki, Ahriman or Angry Manu, Enlil. What happened in that story is that Ahura Mazda was supposed to be born first, but Angry Manu or Ahriman ripped its way out of the womb first. And I see that happening now with, like, now in the age of Aquarius, we should be, it should be this more of kind of this memory or ancient intelligence coming to the forefront. But instead, there's something which is this mechanical thing, unnatural, is trying to rip its way out into this world through matter, through the machine, through AI, through the physical, which some call Ahriman. And I think the powers that be are trying to usher and force this energy into the world. But the two brothers, the heart and the mind, or the yin and the yang, is being played out all the time. And there's similarities all throughout history. But we're in it now. Like, we're in our karma of Atlantis, I think, where AI or this machine could take over. It's like the hex versus the binary, the nature versus the mechanical is playing out right now, and it's being revealed to us, like the apocalypse, the revelation. People can see it more clearly that this cosmic drama isn't just in the past, it's right now. So yeah,
I mean, yeah, that is Aquarius. That is, the waters above. That is the knowledge being poured onto man. And you mentioned the yin and the yang, and that also like really makes me think of Pisces. Like if you go, like if you look at the symbol of Pisces, it is like both kind of the 69 giggity, but also like very reminiscent of the yin and the yang. So like, could it be that coming out of the age of Pisces, that we're kind of coming out of the age of duality into the age of Aquarius, with the knowledge being poured onto man?
Yeah, well, I think in the age of Pisces, if you split it, it's Pisces. So the pi would be a circle, or pi would be the gate or the portal. And it seems in the age of Pisces, we were tuned into a different frequency. If you look at all the old world or Tartarian buildings, etc., we're on a different frequency. And I think when you mentioned the yin yang, that's the union of opposites. It's one and the same. Perhaps in the age of Pisces, there was more of a balance. Perhaps people had knowledge and intuition, so they were more wise. Hence, they were more in tune with the earth. Whereas now, we're on a threshold between one age and another, between one god and another. It's sort of decision time whether we want to give our energy to this or to that, so to speak. And the singularity mentioned with AI is like a singular, but it's not unity. It's more of a uniform. Whereas the yin yang would be a unity, like two together, duality, which is a singular, but the singularity is just the one or the other. Non-binary comes to mind with being not a balance of both, but being neither.
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing. Like, this is very interesting. Let me bring up that once again. So this is that we're still with this English translation by Toril Jacobsen, right? And so he goes through the stone tablet, and this is his translations of the stone tablets, right? Then it comes with the entire thesis that he wrote is with all of these 9 pages. 9 pages. When we look at the 3rd page of what this Turuk guy wrote, just let me point something out to you. This is going to be, in those days, a child spent 100 years in diapers. That's what the texts are saying of the wash. So there's some bits missing. So in those, this translation, it's nothing to do with stitching. In those days, a child spent 100 years in diapers, some bits missing of the wash. After he had grown up, he spent 100 years without being given any task. Talking about time. Okay. Now, here's a very interesting point. We're talking about the etymology and the words. Ka, li, I hope you guys can see this. Doom. Kali, Doom, Dham, Bakabhe, Igji, Mini, Belip, Hubor, Ri, Ig, Miss Shu, Nutsi, Sad, Lip, Isu, no, Lip Shu. So here's like the actual syllables that he's provided for us. But we look at this text that this guy, and this is his journey, his journal of biblical literature that he's extracting from these tablets. Just look at what he's saying, this guy. He's saying that 2 kings reigned for 46,800 years. That's Eridu's term. Eridu's term was commuted, shifted in Bad Tibera, Eman Luana, reigned for 46,800 years. Then Eman Gal Lana reigned for 64,800 years. Then Dumuzi. Now Dumuzi was the lover of what's her name? I'll take you back to the text that we're talking about that she wrote. She was Inanna. Inanna had a thing with Dumuzi, as far as my memory goes. I could be wrong. Dumuzi, the shepherd. Okay. Remember we were talking about Pan? Dumuzi, the shepherd, reigned for 36,000 years. Then 3 kings reigned for 100,000 years. Bad Tipira's term. Bad Tipira's term was commuted. In Sipar, Ebmenuturang reigned for 64,800 years. That means 1 king reigned for 64,800 years. That's the Sipar's term. Sipar's term was commuted. After him, the Larak Ensipadzinana reigned for 36,000 years. 1 king reigned 36,000 years. That was called the Larak's term. So we had 2 of those 36. The Dumuzi reigned for 36,000 years. And we've got another reference in the texts here of Endizabadziana reigning for that. 1 king reigned for 36,000 years called the Larak's term, and this was commuted. In Shurupak, Ubhara Tutu reigned for 28,800 years, and then Ziutsudra reigned for 64,800 years. Now, Ziutsudra is who we're calling Noah, right? This is the story, and let me go back to the to the particular stone tablet, because he's using other tablets that he's translated, that's the tablet of kings that he's referring to, because this guy translated a lot of Sumerian stuff. This Thorkild Jacobsen was the premier translator of Sumerian. Now we're talking here in the next, this is tablet column number, okay, so number 2 is when the royal scepter, okay, number 2, the second tablet. Sorry, the second lines across the tablet. Let me have him advise. Let me have him oversee their labor, and let him teach the nation to follow unerringly like cattle. So they were basically controlling human beings to be like brainwashed. When the royal scepter was coming down from heaven, the august crown and the royal throne being already down from heaven, i.e. the king, regularly performed the perfection, the august divine services and offices. Now, they mention later in these tablets that has to do with augury. Josh, disappear, please. That has to do with augury. And augur is got to do with divination. And this has got to do with removing the guts of animals in order to divine what was going to become at a later time. They were named by name and allotted half-bushel baskets. So what you got given was based upon a divination. Interesting system. The firstling of those cities, Erudu, she gave the leader Nundimut. And Josh, I promise you I'm going to throw your gun in the sea if you come and disturb me again. I promise. So that you walk away and be quiet is the best thing you can do. Thank you, my boy. Sorry,
what did you say about removing the guts of animals?
That was part of the augur. And that was an ancient augur practice that has been like practiced until thousands of years ago, which was to remove the guts of animals and use them for creating what they call an augur. And an augur is a divination. And so that's how prehistorically people used to divine. They would read the guts of animals to know what was going to happen in the future. It's a very, very ancient thing. It goes right back to Sumerian time.
The reason I mentioned that is because there seems to be an attack on our gut biome now, which affects our critical thinking. So I'm just putting it out there that the guts of animals is our guts so that the powers that be can do their divination.
That's very interesting. It's an interesting point. But
And
anyway, here they
was
talking about how she gave to Shuru. Sorry, brother. This just to finish this off so I can take this away. This is all the story of Inanna that we're reading here. And you see when you go to the next text, that day Nuntur wept over her creatures, and holy Inanna was full of grief over their people. But Enki took counsel in his own heart. An Enlil, Enki, and Nunhursaga. Nunhursaga, I think, was Enki's sister and wife. Am I right? Or is that his mom? I'm sorry, I get confused sometimes. Had the gods of heaven and earth swear by the names. At that time, Ziusudra was king. So we're talking about prior to, and now Ziusudra was the king. Now there's another set of tablets where Ziusudra gets given lapis lazuli tablets, right? And this is from what's your name, Stitchen's work. But you can see that it's dovetailing with the work from this other translator who is like the preeminent Sumerian scholar of the last century. I mean, come on. But do you notice how the dates of how long those kings reigned for? Now, this is another thing that Zachariah Stitchen was not for, because he came up with these ridiculous dates saying that they were here like maybe a million years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago. And people were like, oh, come on, that's too far-fetched. But now we've got these other tablets that were translated by this other guy that's actually confirming. So when you start really looking into this, you start noticing, this is very interesting. Like the history of humanity, they found a place in Israel, modern-day Israel, or close to the border of Israel, where there's a settlement where they've got evidence of people being almost 1 million years ago in groups making fires.
Huh. And
so the reason I bring this in there is we're talking about Pan. We're talking about these guys. We've got very modern versions of stories that could be 500,000 years old.
And also, like I looked up Dumuzi real quick. He, by the way, he is indeed the first and primary consort of the goddess Inanna, later known as Ishtar. However, that is kind of disputed. But he is, like he is also the story of Persephone. He is the story of Balder. It's just his Greek equivalent is Adonis, who is the in Greek mythology he's immortal, but he's the mortal lover of the goddess Aphrodite and Persephone, who spends half of her time in here on Earth and half of her time down in Hades, because Hades is the realm, not the god. And it's in Sumerian mythology, it was Dumuzit who spends his half the year in heaven and the other half in Kur, which is the ancient Mesopotamian underworld. Roughly parallel to the region known as Tartarus from the early Greek mythology. So if it is like adjacent to Tartarus, would that make him a Titan or Titan-like being, perhaps? Because it is in Tartarus where, according to the mythology, the Titans were locked up. And if Kur is adjacent or like very close to, or like as it says on Wikipedia at least, trying to use as mainstream sources as possible, of course, roughly parallel to the region known as Tartarus, described as a dark, dreary cavern located deep below the ground. Here we go again with caverns, caves, grottos, going like all the way back to Sumerian times, to possibly, even Nibiru.
Yeah, I've always.
So I'm just curious. Like, could he be like a Titan or Titan adjacent? Perhaps, if that's a thing. I mean, he's lived for
this is what they mention in those old records. This is, they say that from that planet Nibiru, which we could call what did the Greeks call it? Why's my brain got blank? What did the Greeks call their place where they came from?
Greece.
Where did Zeus live? Why have I got drawing a blank? Well, the Greeks had a special place where these gods came from.
Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus.
Mount Olympus, exactly. Olympus. But no one could go there except if you had a Pegasus. And only Mercury was able to cross the threshold to get between here and there. Now, that's an interesting story. Then, according to the Sumerian, there was a place somewhere else where they came from to here, and that's where they went to fetch their sheep and goats from. So it's not just a metaphorical place as an idea, as a concept. According to the old text, they brought goats here, they brought sheep here, they brought certain food plants here for agriculture, stuff that they were used to eating, right? So like it's not just a metaphor. And if that's the case, then goats are a metaphor. I mean, every time you see a goat, you're looking at a metaphor, right? According to their stories that they're telling. either the whole story is just made up and fabricated nonsense, or there's something more to the story because there's evidence of the story. But so the point I'm making is that these beings that came, they mention the size of 10 to 14 cubits, right? So they mentioned 10 to 14 cubits tall was these Nibiru people, the ruling caste of Nibiru. Then they say that they brought the Igigi, who the Greeks called the Grigori. And the Grigori, according to the Greek stories, came down to earth from the heavens. But according to the Sumerian story, the Igigi had been stationed on Mars and they were brought to earth from Mars, down from the heavens. And the Igigi were bigger than the ruling caste of Nibiru because there were lots of races. They even mention in the first tablet, and if we can rely on this translation, that there was this queen that was a dragon on the other planet called Tiamat, and that Tiamat and Nibiru had been at war for a long time, and that Tiamat had fashioned warriors out of local serpents that were as high as 40 cubits. Some of them were 40 to 50 cubits. They mentioned specifically creatures that were 40 to 50 feet tall. Doesn't that sound like dinosaurs? That were serpent creatures that were used in the wars against Nibiru. And that they fought these terrible wars and that they brought these serpents. Some of these serpent beings had been left on Nibiru. The bigger ones had been removed, war, but there were still very big ones, and they had been integrated into Nibiru society, which was a multicultural, multiracial society, and the beings weren't all the same size. Then they speak about how the Igigi had been brought to Mars. Because they were bigger, they could withstand more extreme temperatures. They were more robust and they were stronger. Then those beings are the ones that were brought to Earth because there was an impending flood coming and the conditions in Mars were getting bad, according to those stories. So we see the same story repeated by the Greeks with the Grigori coming, and the Grigori are the watchers, and the watchers are the Nephilim. And the Nephilim spawned, according to the Hebrew story, the Anakim. And so the Anakim spawned from the Nephilim are the same Grigori mating with humans to make the Titans. You with me? And so we look at the Greek stories of the Titans, and they dovetail with the stories of the Sumerians, and they also dovetail with the story of the Norse, the ancient Norse stories. This is why I often say when people talk to me about ancient Norse, I'm like, you've got Saxon blood, right? I can see it in your face.
Celtic and Norse, yeah.
Yeah, I can see it in your face. And you Celtic and Saxon. I've probably got both myself. And I must have. Because I've got Irish and Scottish, but I've also got Saxon, and they're mixed in. And anyway, those ancient Norse tradition that got absorbed into the Saxon tradition with the language of Germanic that became English. Because English came from Germanic, which comes from largely from Norse, root language of English. We want to talk about Greek. Why, man? The Norse is way older than the Greek.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that a lot of people seem to have Irish blood in them or Celtic blood, like a lot of people. It's a small place, right? I've always thought that the Irish blood people have in them is possibly Atlantean, or like Tartarian, or it seems to be like a worldwide, there seems to be a worldwide peoples, like a shared blood that we all have. And then now it's called Irish, just from a small place, but I think it was more spread out than that. And I've also heard, you mentioned the Nephilim, I've heard that they were from the earth, not from somewhere else. They came from inside the earth, because I think it's the Nephilim and the Watchers, or the Nephilim and some other kind of giants. They were different. There was a war between two types of giants, and that the flood was caused by Enlil to wipe out this race of giants on the earth. And I think that ties into Tartaria as well, possibly, because all of these old world buildings, beautiful architecture, have huge doorways. They don't look like they were built by savages. It looks like these buildings were built by a race of giants who were more conscious than we are now. And I think this ties into humans or people on Earth making too much noise for Enlil, so he had to wipe out the giants. That these giants of the Earth from Gaia had a heightened consciousness, and that consciousness was too noisy for this for this god who wanted to basically control humanity. So he had to wipe out these advanced beings. Have you heard that there were giants from the earth that were, had a certain blood type? I think that blood type was Rhesus negative, which is the blood type that the elite seem to want to hold on to, because there's a special injection they give people who are O negative or Rhesus negative to try and suppress that magic. I think witches and stuff had this special blood group also.
I'll tell you about what makes a Rhesus negative special. Is a Rhesus negative blood can be given to anyone. It's a universal blood. So if you are a Rhesus negative and I am AB or A negative or B positive, I can take your blood, but you can't take mine. So as a blood donor, you are the perfect blood donor for any blood type. That is it. Now, there's been a lot of people taking this and taking the thread apart and looking at it, and it must mean this and it must mean that. But I think on a base scientific level, it's that. It's a universal blood donating. If I want to do genetic mixing with anybody, the Rhesus negative is the easiest blood type for me to work genetic mixing with, because it's a universal blood. And if I want to take your blood for myself, I can, if I need blood banks, for example. But going back to the Nephilim, according to the book of Numbers, I think it's Numbers. Let me just check here quickly.
Can I just quickly say, while you're looking that, I've heard that this race of giants were connected to dragons, and they were connected to the blood of dragons or something like that, and that they wanted. It was someone who was a Christian on a podcast who was talking about this, who was saying that these giants used to take the blood from other people. But I'm just thinking that if these giants or this dragon bloodline weren't from the heavens or the earth, I view that as more of like a plasma kind of, not here nor there, more like I view dragon energy as a plasma. I think that this race of giants, I don't know, I think that there was possibly something special with them, that they're not evil and they did have this blood type. And if you have this blood type, why would you want the blood of others? I think it's the other way around, and it's an inversion, that they didn't want the blood of others. This other line of Nimrod, who is in power now, wants that blood. And I have heard that this blood type are more susceptible to extrasensory perception and stuff. I'm not sure if you've heard that. I don't think it's just the universal blood type. Again, universal blood type, universal peoples, Celtics, Atlanteans, could we have all shared the same blood type, and this blood is consciousness which they've diluted, mixed it all up?
That also kind of goes into the theory that the Irish are the original Aryans.
I think they are part of the tribe of there were three tribes. There's the tribe of the three sons of Noah. So this is why we brought up Ziusudra. Ziusudra is the original archetypal Noah from the Sumerian. And they say that he was a king for 36,000 years. Now, the popular idea that people want to say is that, they must have translated the word year wrong, right? That's the typical propaganda that we've been brainwashed with. But according to the biography, according to the work by Thorkild Jacobson, who was the premier Sumerian person, and nothing to do with Stitchen, according to his work, these dates are legit dates. So everybody wants to turn this into a story with him, right? They don't want to look at this guy's work because he'll never mention it. You know why? Because he's too valid. He's too much validated by the system to be questioned. And his work speaks about how these thousands of years were done. So interesting point. But just to get back to the Nephilim. So according to the book of Enoch, some of the angels came down to earth. And the angels landed on earth and they mixed their seed with human woman. And these human women, their offspring was called Nephilim. They were the first prototype mixed breed between the angel and the humans. And so they were of the earth, but they were also not of the earth. Then according to Genesis, Genesis 6, verse 1 to 4, the Nephilims were the mighty ones or giants who were offspring of a union between divine beings, sons of God, and human women, daughters of men, before the great flood. Right? So that's where the story of the Nephilim comes from. So technically speaking, the Nephilim are from the earth, but the Nephilim was the first prototype. And then the Nephilim spawned the Anakim. And the Anakim were the misshapen giants. They were like demented. So you've got the Devas and the Devis that arrive in the Vedic story. Then from that comes the Asuras. And the Asuras were also gigantic beings. And then from the Asuras come the Rakshas. And so the Rakshas are the equivalent of, in Vedas, of the Anakim. And the Asuras are the equivalent of what we call the Nephilim. And the Devas and the Devis are the equivalent of what we call, hey, kitty, of what we call the original beings. Hello. So, yes, to long story short, the Nephilim were from the earth, and they would maybe have gone into the earth to hide away from the great flood. No? So maybe there's a reference that after the great flood, they emerged from inside the earth because they had gone into bunkers to hide away from a flood, having technology and all of that, right? Like we would. Does that make sense? But originally, they came from beings that came from elsewhere, merging with humans, which is what the Sumerian texts are suggesting, or seem to be suggesting. So it's like it's interesting. And I think like when we look at these ideas, we tend to want to lump them all into the last 10,000 years. But I think that this other find of this oldest settlement, and by the way, these anthropologists and historians are completely mind-blown because they're having arguments within the community. One group of anthropologists are saying that they were hunter-gatherers, right? But you know what there is? There's evidence that at the same place that there were fires and that there was congregations of humans. They can see by the archaeological records. And they have dated this stuff to more than 900,000 years old. So we've got reference of humans making fires and being together in a group, civilized, 900,000 years ago. And now they're saying that, well, they must have been nomadic people that just stopped in the same place every year because there's no evidence of them having buildings. But like 900,000 years is a long time.
Yeah, you would like be living in huts and you'd break them down as you go, as you know, many nomads still do.
What if they built out of wood?
Yeah, just natural materials.
What if they built out of cement like we do? What if they had technology to create bricks? And that 900,000 years, what do you think is going to be left of us in 900,000 years?
Not a whole lot. I'm gonna assume not the way.
There'll be nothing left. It'll be a desert. Think about it. Like everything that we built, our houses don't even last 150,000 years.
Oh no. Oh no, like with a bit of luck, they'll last 150 years, not 150,000. No.
So, but they've now got evidence of this. So they were trying to tell us that humans only had fire for 50,000 years, but we've now got actual archaeological evidence that it's like we're more like 1 million years. And suddenly that list of kings, which we've been told must be a mistake because there's no way people lived that long. Well, how do we know what technology these people had? How do we know that they couldn't extend their lives like indefinitely? How do we know that they weren't able to have a rejuvenation tank, right? Where you go into a rejuvenation tank and you become young again.
Or they just lived that long because, supposedly this was also like when the when our planet was less heavy. That's how I always interpret it. The the falling of man, like falling into density, because the human body is pretty damn dense and we have to like really consciously maintain it to live long and healthy lives. If we're not as dense, as if we are, as you ponder, like 900,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago, I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say that we were definitely more spiritual back then. So what if we were like, if our bodies were more spiritual bodies as well, and we didn't need, to go through all this effort to live long? Like we didn't need to like watch what we eat and work out plenty and move plenty and not, sit as much and all of that, because there was simply no need for it, because the human body, or whatever kind of body we had back then, didn't need that much maintenance.
Here's an interesting point. So I'll share this just as an idea. So according to science, according to our experts, and you're right, you got me going down a rabbit hole here. So the mass of the Earth has barely changed. We're talking 1% change, right? And that's got to do with changes of mass of space dust. So what this means is that there wasn't a big difference 5 million years ago. A kilogram was almost a kilogram 5 million years ago. What they're saying is that there hasn't been, and when you look at the movement of the Earth from the sun, it's a very small amount, right? What is it, like 2 centimeters a year? Is it?
I don't buy into any of that. The distance of the sun, the Earth, the weight of the Earth, it's just their opinion, really.
Right. But here's the facts. We've got dinosaur bones, which we're calling dinosaurs, dragons, whatever we call them, that would not be able to support their own body mass today. How do you explain that?
What do you mean by that? So,
if there was a dinosaur today, it would collapse in a pile of flesh and bones.
Yeah, because the Earth is more dense now than it was. Because
no, that's just it. The density of the Earth, according to science, has changed by 1%.
That's according to science, but also according to science, we should have taken the. So I don't know. I don't believe that. I think that there were giants. Like, also, how would giants have been able to support their own weight?
They would have been able to.
No,
because they weren't as big as dinosaurs. Like, the difference between something that weighs 40 tons or 50 tons and is like 100 tons and is like 100 feet tall, to the shape of a human that's like 20 feet tall.
Well, I think definitely we were more connected to the ether, and there was an amplified resonance on the Earth. I 100% believe that. I think that it's more dense now than it was. Whether they say it is or not, there's a weight on the planet right now. It's heavy. And I think that before people were more enlightened and we were able to live longer because we were lighter. And we did this by being in resonance with the Earth. So science may say that it's not, but yeah, who still trusts science? So I mean, some things
I don't trust him wholly. No,
not with history. I don't know, man. I'm.
You're telling us to not trust the science. You rebel, you.
I don't trust him, but I just look at the logic. And to say that the mass of an object on Earth has changed like to 10 times more mass than what it was, or 5 times more mass than what it was, doesn't make sense. The only way that dinosaurs could have walked was if the mass ratio of gravity, the Earth's gravity must have been much weaker for a dinosaur to be able to. Now, there's only one story that makes sense to me that beings this big could exist, and that's from the Sumerian Chronicles, which says that the Earth was a piece of an exploded planet that traveled through the cosmos to settle here. And after millions of years, it had been bombarded and it had been ionized by the sun and created its own atmosphere and became a planet. But according to the Sumerian history, it was part of a big planet that had a weak gravitational field and was populated by gigantic serpent creatures. It was an oceanic planet. Most of these creatures were in the mud and in the ocean, crawling around in mud and in oceans on a big planet of which the Earth, if that story is true, and a chunk of that, then we could be looking at dinosaur bones that traveled from another point in the galaxy, somewhere else, right, to end up here. And that was a piece of a bigger planet that had a weaker gravitational field that could support the idea of a creature that big carrying its own weight. That's the only logical idea would be the size of the planet must have been much bigger.
That's certainly interesting, but that also buys into the whole space paradigm that there are other planets and stuff, whereas a planet in French just means a little plane. Like there are different planes of existence, like not necessarily physical, but you know, I think that if the planet was less dense, it may explain the pyramids and these giant stones and blocks that have been found. Like that maybe they used resonance to levitate them, but maybe the gravity or the magnetism was less dense, or maybe the moon wasn't here. Who knows? But it's all interesting, that's for sure. And if that story is true, of a planet crashing into our planet, that also does make a lot of sense. That is certainly a possibility. Maybe that's why these dragon bones are found here. But also at the same time, in museums, there aren't actually any real bones. They're all casts.
Most of them,
and there's layers. There's multiple layers of this truth.
That's because they've been hidden and stolen and hidden.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of newspaper reports about bones being found, photographs, and historians discussing the bones. And there's thousands of newspaper reports of these. Where are the actual bones? Well, they went to a certain organization in the USA and they weren't seen again. We've got like all these sets of giant bones of people ranging between 8, 9, 15, 20 feet tall human beings. And there's not a single set of bones available. And nobody will tell us what happened to the bones. But they were found. They were recorded in history. They were written about. The archaeologists were posing for photographs with the bones in their hands.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't just make it up. there was legitimate research done and research papers written by the archaeologists of the time, but then suddenly our history was adjusted. And when they changed our history,
I have a bit of a theory that I just thought up. Like we know that in the oceans, in water, gravity, weight works very differently. That's why giant beings such as the blue whale or the sperm whale or giant squid, what is it, are able to exist. There is a theory that mankind used to be aquatic beings. Like you can still kind of see it. That's why we have still like slightly webbed fingers. There is an island people still here on Earth, I believe, somewhere in the the Indian Ocean, if I'm not mistaken, who are very well adapted to, like, basically living underwater. Like they can see as clearly underwater as we can see above water. They can hold their breath for fucking 20, 30, I don't know how many minutes at a time. There was this great flood. There were multiple floods, probably even. What if, like, a lot of those structures are not like pre-flood or post-flood, but like built during the flood, that we as humankind were forced to adapt to a submerged planet, if you will, over I don't know how many years, evolved into aquatic or semi-aquatic beings, and in that way, with this is like I'm like connecting all theories together because fuck it, why not? With a weaker gravitational pull, we were able to build all these things. Because the Sphinx, for example, which is now like in the desert, has signs of water erosion on its body. So it had to be there at least like during flooded times. Like I'm just going out on a limb, but like trying to connect all of it together, because why not? Speculation,
I think so. I think that there's a lot of. I don't think we'll really be able to track, because like if we think about it, there's so much out there that we can't imagine. And I think about these dragons often. I think about the ideas of like what we call dinosaurs, and to me it makes sense. I think about the paradigm of earths and planes. I don't have a fixed idea of the nature of the earth. People find that strange. What do you mean you don't have a fixed idea? I don't. I think that we're experiencing consciousness, and that consciousness is evolving through the sphere of manifestation, and that consciousness manifests this physical phenomenon of reality. But that consciousness experience of reality can take different forms. And I do think that reality can change according to the perceiver of the reality. I think that the laws of physics are sort of like feedback loops of consciousness to keep us entrained in a particular field of experience, which we call reality. So when it comes to the round, flat, concave earth ideas, I don't have a fixed idea of it. I think, well, maybe it can be different things in different circumstances for different people in terms of experiential. If magic really does work and we really can change reality, which is something I've experienced, then it means that the nature of reality is affected by the human consciousness, the minds, which causes us to ask the fundamental question, well, what is the nature of reality? If we are able to affect reality through our entrainment of thought, then is reality just an expression of thought? It must be. Otherwise, if it wasn't, you wouldn't be able to change it, right? So then that begs the question of, like, when we talk about like Earth moving, I'm not thinking of it as moving through the space that they've given us, right? Like, it could be a subatomic field of space, if that makes sense. It might not have to be exactly what it is. I do think that, like, what they tell us is space might be more of a substance. The idea of a vacuum doesn't make sense to me. I think that we might be in like water, or a kind of a watery substance that's out there. Who knows? I don't know. I haven't been there specifically. But and when I think about it, I think that it's inside out, and that we're on the outside looking in, and that we're looking into the center, and things are microscopic on the center. And we're out here and we look bigger, but actually we're looking at small things that are actually bigger. And so this fractal nature of reality is that we're looking at tiny little things that are actually way bigger than us, because we're right outside there. We are the giants outside perimeter of reality, the looking towards the epicenter of reality. And so we see this as like a reflection of solar potential, or electricity, or sun, or emerging from a vacuum, as we like to call it, or emerging from the point of what we call consciousness, emerging from the center. So then if a plane were to rupture and be destroyed, can these planes interact with each other? I think they can. I think that the planes and the planets in there are intelligent beings that can interact with us. And I think we can interact with them. And I think that there can be movement towards, I think we can become closer to certain plane or further from. And so I don't take the conventional model that the scientists have tried to shove down our throats, but I sort of sit somewhere between the extremes of, well, something, but not like that, but something, but not like this. Some possibilities which I don't know the answer to. But I do recognize that I'm going to take action if this child carries on. So, no.
That really reminds me, like,
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I had a while ago now, I had a lovely lady on the podcast, Cassandra Deanne, and she is a like, her thing is human design, and where have we come from and all of that, and she does a lot of work with that, channeling and whatever, and what she said is that people that she has worked with, clients that she has worked with, when doing past life regression, they remember being planets, they remember being stars, like actual stars, actual planets, which absolutely blew my mind. Like, I was like, how is that even possible? But if you think about it, we are stardust. Like, the human body, the human genome is not found anywhere else on the planet. Like, we are made up of so many different chemicals, atoms, whatever. All of them are found outside of our planet. So we are stardust, we are the aliens, basically, if you want to put it like that. Reminded me of the show that I did with Cassandra. That was last year around this time, actually, August 31st, 2024. So about a year ago.
Yeah, that reminds me of as above, so below. Like, the stars above are in water, and our DNA, which is our light within, is also in water. And it seems that the light of the stars or the light of the sun comes down like a pitter-patter. Patter is further. The light comes in from further away. Like the pattern, the logos, comes down into the matter, which is the matter, the frequency, the mother, the womb in which we're in. So looking at the mother, the light comes down into the womb when the sperm and the egg meet, and there's an alchemical reaction, and that is the spark of life, which is the building blocks of DNA, but that is connected to the stars as well. There's no separation between the light of the stars and the light that is within us. And then that ties into the constellation, the archetypes, which we can become, also gods, guardians of dimensions, tapping into the frequency that is in the sea up there, which are the stars, are the planets. They're just frequencies. Everything is a frequency that we can connect to them. And then you have stars in Hollywood, and then you have like the sort of externalized kind of the whole kind of externalized thing with like stars, Hollywood, like fame and stuff like that, and then people having followers and stuff, rather than going inwards to unlocking dormant DNA, the spark within, which I correlate to the Tower of Babel, just to be able to understand the technology, which is language and symbols. By working with that, we can unlock parts of our DNA, which is the stairway to heaven, which is the stairway to the all mind, which is just the spirit.
Jacob's
all is
ladder.
mind. Yeah, all is mind just means that all of spirit, which is everything. And I think that we can unlock dormant parts of our DNA, the spark within, which I think is the Akashic records. The Akashic records are in here, in each one of us, the collective memory we all carry, and it's within, and it's in. We have to go through water to reach the light. We have to go through the dark, the abyss, to get to that light, because water is a barrier which light goes through. I believe that Bush Whisperer, you experienced that when you were 3, and when you died, it was light. You were light, but sort of carry you. The water and light are. It just seems they're both waves, right? You have light waves, water waves. They're interlinked, and I think that is the union of like light is sort of like the mind, knowledge, and water is like the heart. I always use those two frameworks: the heart and the mind, water and the light or the air. You know.
Yeah, I like that. Or if we kind of like take it back to Baphomet, the mind would be the fire, would be the light. So you have fire and water, which is, also kind of why mind and heart don't always cooperate with each other.
Yeah, that is the bar, which is the soul, which is the more feminine archetype. And then the foe is fire. So you have the bar, which is the water, which is the feminine part of like our soul. And then the foe, Met. The whole Baphomet thing is the union of opposites. You have the boy and the girl, the children, the kids. You have the light coming out of the head. You have the as above, so below. You have the Caduceus. It's all union of opposites, which they don't want union. They want us to be uniformed. And by they, I mean, we all know who they are. Powers that be. They want us separated. They don't want boy and girl. They want us hating each other. They want gender wars. They don't want us to be coexisting. They don't want the Caduceus. They don't want us looking above or going inwards. They want us to be here, but not orientated. They just want us spinning in circles, really. So yeah, the Baphomet is to me, it's Sophia, wisdom. Also, it's magic. It's a sort of magnet. Like magnet and magic is similar there. There's like, if we can understand our past and our future, we can understand where we are now and where we're going. And if we can understand what the stars and constellations and the archetypes are and what is out there, and then if we can go inwards, we can be like very present and be able to communicate coherently by understanding these archetypes of what we could become.
So that is part of the as within, so without. To understand the world, we need to understand ourselves. To understand ourselves, we need to understand the world. whatever this world may be. I mean, it's a realm at the very least. You were talking about the Akashic records. I late October, I'm gonna have someone on the podcast to talk about that. She has done a lot of studies with the Akashic records, astral, from the Astral Hour. I recently was a guest on her show. You should really talk to her about that. She is absolutely amazing when it comes to that. I'll forward her details.
Yeah, the word Akashic records is obviously ash is fire, and records is a record, so it's going back to our fire, and a chord is a frequency, and the frequency is the matter, which is the water. So that is the fire, and the water is the Akashic records. I think that's the connection of the two polarities of the father and the mother, so we can be the child.
Oh, so
Mercury in between, and then we'll remember who we are. Possibly.
So that makes me think of, like the standard line that they always say with the funerary rites: ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So would that mean that your ashes, your Akashic records, your mind becomes parts of the whole again? And according to the creation myth of Adam and Eve, God formed Adam from the dust of the ground. So your mind is becoming, whole again with, with the all, and your body is becoming parts of, the celestial body again, which is also the as above, so below.
It's very interesting when we look at the Akash, because this comes from, obviously it's a Sanskrit term, and you've got Priviti, you got Apas, you got Tejas, you got Vayu, and you got Akash. And so those are the 5 fundamental elements of Vedic alchemy. And obviously the Priviti is the earth, the Apas is the water, the Tejas is the fire, and the Vayu is the air element. And the Akash is that substance from whence all the elemental substances arise. So like when we use the word ash or ash, fire produces ash. And so the metaphor with that is relating to that the plasma of fire. Fire is like a kind of a plasma substance. And the ash is what we see as a result of plasma, because you can't see and touch plasma, right? It's like it's ephemeral, which is what the Akash is. And the interesting point here, when we look at this, so they relate to chakras in the body as well. They relate to hermetic principles. In the way that they relate to the 7 chakras, like you've got, your smell, taste, proprioception, so smell, taste, vision, proprioception, and then sound. So those 4 senses of smell is your root chakra, taste is your svadhisthana, your sacral plexus, related to, enzyme production. Sight is related to your solar fire, your solar power, which is why your liver and your kidneys are so important for eye health, for example. And the sense of touch is related to your air element, which is the breath in your lungs, which is how you can sense touch. It's through your lungs, interestingly enough, because it's the biggest piece of skin, most sensitive skin on the body. But then sound is related to Akash specifically. So then we're looking at the principle of vibration as a hermetic principle. So Akasha represents the idea of pure vibration, that everything is just a vibrational frequency of consciousness, and that vibrational frequency of consciousness is the Akash, and that is that proverbial element that connects all of the other elemental states and brings them into a state of being, because they are all emanations from Aum. And Aum is the eminence of vibrations moving through the body. And because of that sound, the sound cymatically, through cymatics, organizes different elemental states of vibration and pitch and harmonics. And so each different elemental state has got its own harmonic pitch and comes with its own set of sacred geometric pictures and patterns that are intrinsic to that particular elemental state. So the Akash is symbolized as a black egg in Vedic cosmology. So all indigo, and this is very interesting because now we're talking about indigo, we're talking about lapis lazuli, we're talking about lazurite. These are all gems that will tune you to the Akash frequency. Lapis lazuli, azurite, and these were all like very sought after in ancient Egypt. Now, when we go to Inanna worship, Inanna was Ishtar was worshipped later, but in a different epoch. And this is why I brought out the years, because Inanna might have been called Inanna at one point, but maybe 20,000 years before that, it was, I mean, Ishtar was Ishtar, but maybe 20, 50, maybe 100,000 years before that was Inanna. So they've tried to make everything, all of the epochs fit into 8, 9, 10,000 years, right? But now we're getting evidence that the epochs are drawn out further. So we're told that the Sumerian is that age and this is this age, but I think like they've tried to compress it all into like a very small patch so that we don't look further into our histories. And Inanna was the equivalent of what has become known as Venus today through Ishtar and all of these. So Venus in those days was Inanna, and she had a lapis lazuli wand, and lapis lazuli beads, a lapis lazuli crown, and lapis lazuli sphere. She was the goddess of related to magical powers, and she travels into the underworld. Inanna. The same story is told by the Akkadians in the form of Ishtar. By the way, it's the same story. And she has to remove each of these items, 7 items: her wand, her crown, her rosary, her mala. I think she had a ring, and she had a garment as well that had gems embedded in it. And she had to remove each of these 7 items in order to be able to travel into the underworld. So that idea there is very interesting because Inanna relates to Akasha in a sense. Venus relates to Akasha. Now, when we look at Venus's spin, Venus is spinning in the opposite direction of all the other planets. And Venus has an occult title, and Venus's occult title is the gateway to the mysteries. That's Hermetics, Kabbalah, whichever source you look at. Venus is considered the mystic gateway. So when we look at the tarot card, which is related to this, which is the Empress, right? We see her sitting on a throne. And that throne that she's sitting on is that place of that alternative state of being. You could say that looking at that is a template for the Akasha. Isn't that an interesting concept? The template for the Akasha could be looked at in that tarot card. All the abundance that comes to earth, all the life that comes to earth comes through the Akashic field. And this, it's technically wrong to speak of it as records. That's a much later term that came because we think of physical as being like a mechanical state of records, but the Akasha is a vibrational field that is subspace. And it's a subspace field that holds the future and the past. So anytime you're having a divination experience of a vision of the future or the past, whether it's past lives or whether it's future lives or whether it's things that's going to happen in this world, you are entering into the Akash, because the Akash holds the structure of the elements, and the elements hold the structure of the 5th dimension in place. And so when we talk about Akasha, we're literally talking about the 5th dimension. And that 5th dimension is that mystical place that is the mysteries, the gateway. And that's basically a place of pure vibration and sound. And so that's like very interesting, like getting into the Akash. I'm just going to let my boy in quickly.
I was making notes all the way through that. Had my brain firing away. I'll just go through through them quickly, if that's all right. The Akashic Records was known as the Black Egg, which I view as like the plasma, like the place of the place of the mother, which is dark matter. And also reminded me of the description of Azoth. Azoth is like the beginning and the end of all things. I can't remember what the Alpha and Omega. Azoth is an alchemical term. It's the sulfur, which is the fire, or the spirit, or the Ka, the father. The mercury, which is the solvent, which is the child, and then the salt, which is the body, or the matter, or the mother. And Azoth is the union of all three things. And the union of all three things would be a plasma. And it also reminds me of the Merkaba, which is the Mercury, the Ka, which is the spirit or sulfur, and the Ba, which is the salt or the body, or the mother. And when you mentioned Venus, obviously Venus is the morning star, which is Lucifer, which is the bringer of light. Being an alternative state, us being pushed away from Lucifer, being pushed away from alternative thinking, possibly a stubborn way of thinking, hence the goat head, because goats seem to be very stubborn. They keep falling, but they keep climbing that mountain. And then also 5D reminds me of going beyond time. Like 4D would be time, and us going from 3-dimensional to 5-dimensional, or density, a less dense sort of view of time and space is what happens when you tap into the Akashic Records or the field. Just some notes I made while Franklin was talking there.
I mean, talking about the egg, that really reminds me of the cosmic egg, which is very Proto-Indo-European, of course. Typically, the upper half of the egg or its outer shell becomes the heaven or the firmament. The lower half, or even the inner yolk, becomes the earth, which is also very reminiscent of Germanic mythology, even, where it is the three brothers, Woden, Willi, and Ve, the triple V. That's where you get where they also probably got the Valknut symbol from, which is all in Nightside of the Runes, which I'm reading on Patreon. But they created from the primordial ice giant Ymir, they created the world. His blood are the rivers, his skull, his dome became the heavens held up by four dwarves in the cardinal directions of the wind. His brains became the clouds, his bones became the mountains themselves. So it's I don't know, it's always something that is like placed over the earth, or like some sort of a dome. If we're talking about the cosmic egg, it is the upper half of the egg, its shell, which is the heavens. In Germanic mythology, it's the dome, the skull, literally, which is or is created the heavens. So yeah, and I've also found some references. I found it is the tablet number 6 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, where lapis lazuli is mentioned, and it's incredibly well. It's pretty interesting because it ties into a lot of what we were saying. When Gilgamesh placed his crown on his head, a Princess Ishtar raised her eyes to the beauty of Gilgamesh. "Come along, Gilgamesh, be you my husband, to me grant your lusciousness. Oh. Be you my husband, and I will be your wife. I will have harnessed for you a chariot of lapis lazuli and gold, with wheels of gold and horns of electrum. It will be harnessed with great storming mountain mules. So this is like, it's both, it's gold, it's horns, it's electrum, so some sort of electricity, electromagnetism, if you will, storming mountain mules, and kind of like, does that make him a storm god of some kind? Is Gilgamesh Yahweh? Or what's the Yahweh, I believe the storm god is. So lapis lazuli and gold, why those two? Like, and then electrum, is it because is electrum an amalgamation of gold and silver? I don't know, it might be. I don't know what electrum is actually, but I know that gold is very, very conductive for electricity. So electrum, I'm gonna assume, has something to do with electricity or magnetism.
I think
it is actually. Electrum is a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver with trace amounts of copper.
Yes. I think it's an unrefined form of silver that's got gold in it. That's how I've always understood it. But silver. Here's the interesting thing. When you look at the pharaohs and you look at the pre-dynastic, the earliest dynasties, they revered silver more than gold. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. There's also.
Do you know why that was?
Silver can be polished. When gold goes black, it's ruined.
I'm wondering about this electrical principles. I think it's got a lot to do with its electricity. And maybe that gold was being shipped off planet. But silver is more electrically conductive than gold. So for technology, silver is more electrically conductive than gold. Less resistance, more efficiency of electrical output. The more resistance you have from a circuit, the more heat is produced, the more energy you lose. So if you want a highly efficient circuit, you're going to use silver.
Yeah, apparently I've heard that silver is actually grossly undervalued at the moment. I can't remember the exact amount, but the amount of silver that's being mined is much less than gold, I think. I think silver's undervalued by like ×8 or something like that. It's a shame I can't remember the exact amount, but apparently it's really undervalued by a lot. So that would make sense with silver maybe actually being more valuable.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So I think this is why the Egyptians had it, because they could use silver in ways for technology that was better than gold for certain things. Where you needed high conductivity, silver was better. Now this electrum, I think, also had a very high level of conductivity, but was more readily available. It was like the poor man's silver, because the silver was kept for like the priests. The priests got to use the silver for their whatever they needed, I think, as far as I know. And the pharaohs, they valued their silver very highly. But here's an interesting point, like when we're looking at this, and you mentioned about the Gilgamesh, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this makes me want to go back to this, right? Actually, I wanted to mention that, but let's just say for now. So I'm on the third part of the same guy's text for everybody. If you just want to see, this is the Eridu Genesis by There you can see his name, Jacobson, JBL. There's the number of his document. You know, all these documents have citing numbers. This citing of this page, which is his research, this Jacobson guy that we spoke about earlier. When I go to the third page, remember what I was reading about? This has got to do with the list of kings. Now, Ziusudra here that we see here, right? Sorry, don't know why I'm doing this. Let me go back to this page. This guy's making it hard for me. I'm old Greg, you're making it hard. Okay, so then we can see Ziusudra comes at this point here. I hope you guys can see the marker that I'm using. That's Ziusudra there, who reigned for 64,000 years. Now we have to go all the way back, 28,000 years back. Then we've got to go, which was the Shurupak Urubatutu. From him, doesn't that sound African? Huh? From them, we've got to go to Larak's term was committed, and Larak was king for 36,000 years. Then we've got to go back to the next 36,000 years, which was Larak Ensipadziana. Then before he's commuted, now commuted means it was ended. In other words, he got to his 36,000 years and that was his allotted time. Sort of like presidents were presidents for so long, you know, that's commute the presidency. Then there was Sipar, and Sipar's term was 64,800 years, right? Which is an interesting number. And prior to him was the Emaduranki, which was 64,800 years. And then we've got to go back to the point where the three kings reigned for 100,000 years. That was the Bat Tibera's term. And prior to that was Dumuzi, the shepherd king. Now, Dumuzi was the one who was the Inanna's, her man, right?
Consort. Yeah.
Now, do you notice her being the one there putting the crown on his head? Right? Ishtar, Inanna, putting the crown on. I believe they're the same person. I believe that we're looking at a record here in this particular document, which is, well, stone carvings, which is Dumuzi becoming the king. And I think that text that you were reading, Stein, is Dumuzi becoming the king. Because she ended up marrying him, or she ended up keeping him as a consort. I don't know if that's marriage or whatever it meant in those days. And so that's like really interesting. And notice how far that is before Ziusudra. Now we know that Ziusudra's life, that was when the flood happened. So we are talking eons before the flood, right? Long before the great flood, when we're talking about the Wuzi. And so what you were talking about there made me think about that, you know, made me think about that notion that you know. Oh, and there was one other thing I wanted to point out as well. There's a place called Kashi. And these Kashi, we were talking about Akasha or Akash, right? It comes from the root word of Kashi. Now, Kashi is the abode of Shiva, by the way. And so Shiva lives disembodied from physical form in a mystical city, mystical place called Kashi. And now we've got the Akash, the Akasha, right? Which is the substance of that mystical place. So we're talking about Shiva's domain when we're talking about Akasha, just to bring that back. And Shiva is the aspect of lifting the consciousness out of the physical form. So when you're practicing Shiva meditation, you're learning to absorb your consciousness inwards out of the body. Because you go out of the body when you go inwards. Isn't that interesting?
That is very interesting. Also, a cash, when you say just a cash rather than a kashik, reminds me of cash money. So what's money? Money is mon e, one energy. It's currency. It's their energy exchange in this realm that we give to each other, that we use to build. We build it with our energy. We don't build it with banknotes. So a cash is one energy. It's like the ether. So it's interesting that we have cash. Where does the word cash come from? Probably we'll say something else, but it's a cash. A cash. It's just the one energy that we all use to tap into. But instead of tapping into the literal one energy, it's been externalized or whatever, and we literally just use a coin, like, which used to be gold, which used to hold a value, like a real spiritual value, like an essence. Gold and silver conducting electricity, that would have had a effect on the currency, like the current we pass around. But now it's all digitalized, and then there's not much magic in transactions.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was looking up Electrum, what it is, and Rachel, you are right, it is an amalgamation of gold and silver. It was actually the very first, or some of the very first, like, physical coins that were made from Electrum. And when you're talking about money, as you said, like currency, it's the currency, money, liquidity. And even if you look at the dollar sign, for example, I believe it is you could even say that it is the snake going round the tree. Money is the root of all evil. And I mean, we all know a lot of evil things have been done in the pursuit of money. And, especially the dollar, which is supposed to be it's such a powerful coin, powerful currency, backed by oil, which is another liquid coming from the earth. It's the earth's lifeblood, if you will.
Well, dollar reminds me of a doula, which helps the midwife give birth. Now, we've spoken before about this, Stein, on our conversation with AI, about how money is being used to create this AI. You see it on the dollar bill, the AI, the pyramid with the eye on top.
Yeah.
Our collective energy is being used to, the dollar is this doula, which is giving birth to this Ahrimanic force. Also, Electrum reminds me of a plectrum, where you play the chord, like the Akashic records.
Yeah. Bringing about vibration and sound and music, of course, having a major impact. And music, of course, having a major impact on someone's soul. Like, how many times have we, we all have that one song that we can listen to 1,001 times and never get bored of it, or that one song or that one artist that when we're feeling depressed we put on, or that if we're feeling really happy that we put on. They also say that music is the language of the soul. And like, how many artists have sold their soul for their music, or how many artists have put their heart and soul into their music.
I have to go in a second, but I'll just leave you guys with this, back to Pan and what we're talking to now about music and frequency, the currency. Pan and Apollo had a musical contest, apparently, and Pan played the pipes, and Apollo played the lyre, and Apollo won. And I think that this may have something to do with this frequency that's happening now. It seemed, because I had this thought a while ago that because CERN, with that opening ceremony in 2016, were parading Pan's head, and some people will think that that's Lucifer, this goat head demon, and that they're worshipping it. But I felt that it was more of CERN were parading his head, like we've got your guy, because CERN aren't connected to nature. They're using nature, hence CERN, Cernunos. They're using and abusing nature. What's that?
Cernunos, the horned god.
Exactly. So they're using this energy that they're not. It's not from a place of good. I think that what's happened is Pan, when we were connected to that nature, there was this frequency being played, but there was this battle between Apollo and Pan, and Pan lost. Pan was cast out of heaven, out of the mind. And CERN has something to do with Apollo. I've heard it's built on Apollo's tomb or something like that. But him playing the lyre rings alarm bells, because this frequency is a liar. Like, there's a frequency being put out there for this information that is an untruth. Okay, and
it
the
is the
reason
liar. It is the trickster.
Well, exactly, but but I think that the tricks, like the energy or essence of Pan, of nature, has been caged and trapped. I don't think that, because I've thought recently that this energy out there seems to be like the dark mother, the shadow of the mother, this kind of victim mentality, climate change, everything's like this kind of caring mother, but the shadow. But I don't think it is feminine energy. I think this feminine energy, or nature, or Pan, this fresh water, this magic, has been constricted, and I think is being used by this Ahrimanic energy, which is more of an air, mind, mechanical, scientific energy. And I think that CERN is altering our timeline. It's altering the amount of light that's emitted. And these 5G towers and music, they're altering the frequency. They're trying to change matter. They're trying to, what's the word? Manipulate the mother in which we're in, So I'll just leave you guys with that. I can't remember what my original point was. Oh yeah, the contest, the music contest of Pan, nature, and then Apollo, who I haven't looked into the myth of Apollo, but I don't think Apollo was very good.
He's the sun god.
Was he? What's his myth? Do you know? Was he an alright guy or archetype or?
I mean, he's a Greek god, so
no.
no, he is the sun archetype. He is the son of Zeus and Leto, with Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, as his twin sister. He is a god of manifold functions, embodying music, prophecy, healing, archery, poetry, light, the sun, and justice.
I'll just say quickly that this Pegasus, or the white horse of the apocalypse, would be the archer. The first white horse, the conquest, would hold a bow and arrow. So, could that be Apollo, or CERN, trying to sort of bring this energy? Also, going back to frequencies, Pfizer in Germanic means pipe player, and I don't think Pfizer are using the energy of nature. I think that Pan's pipes were stolen. They've taken nature's frequency, and it's being controlled by something unhuman. I don't know if that makes sense. We can't put it all on Pan. We can't say that Pfizer, being pipe player, is the energy of Pan, is the energy of nature. I feel it's been trapped or harnessed and is being used by something other, potentially.
So, but that's a good one. And Rachel made the exact same comment, the Pied Piper. And you could say, because this has all been ramping up after the pandemic, of course, So you could even say, like, in a way, that if you got the inoculation, you paid the Pied Piper.
Well, what's the myth of the Pied Piper? The Pied Piper was paid to get rid of all of the rats or whatever,
Yeah,
but he was betrayed, so he stole everyone's children.
he did.
I think there's something there's something to that, to do with child sacrifice. You know, there's something deep and dark to that story. Like all of these myths are so interesting because the word myth has been, we're told, oh, it's just a myth. What does a myth mean? Most people think that a myth means something that's not real, but actually, myths are more real than anything because it's to do with the archetypal energies. It's the essence of things. It's a way of explaining how things work, which is the universal truth. So there's an inversion. Right, guys, I better go because I haven't had any lunch and it's like 3 o'clock.
Yeah,
so,
you go do that, man. It's been great.
Big love,
yeah,
dear
take
brother.
care, guys. See you both.
You too,
You have a great
You too.
day. Thank you for bringing us together for this lovely little chat.
Yeah, it's been good.
Big blessings, man.
Take care.
You too.
Much love.
I'm gonna have to go soon as well. I
Yeah,
still have other
my
things
little
to do.
boy has been on my case.
Yeah, I wanted to go a little further into the Apollo Pan music contest. I looked it up. He always brings such good stuff to the table. And it was indeed, it was judged by the mountain god Tmolus, who declared Apollo the victor after Apollo played his lyre, producing music so sublime that it caused all nature to fall silent in reverence. But it was actually King Midas, a mortal who happened to be present at the contest, who declared Pan the winner, favoring the rustic, earthy sound of the panpipes. So it was a god, it was a deity who declared Apollo the winner because of his, let's say, angelic sound. But it was the king from Earth who declared that the winner was Pan because of his more earthly, rustic sound. And also King Midas, of course, most well known of the Midas touch. Everything that he touches turns into gold. There's your connection to gold again.
Yeah, he's also credited with the plague from is it the Trojan Wars? The plague from the Trojan Wars, I think, is accredited to Apollo as well. He's the one that slayed Python, that mystical serpent, which who in the Norse tradition, who's that great mythical serpent? It's I forget the name.
Oh, the Ouroboros, come on, I should know his name. Who is that again?
Dude, ever since the eclipse, my brain has been like tripping now. If I look at the sky, all I see is the ether. And it's not because I've been smoking anything. It's just very energetic.
It's Jormungandr. That was it. The Midgard serpent, who is a child of Loki and the giantess Angerboda.
There's also the story with this love of Daphne, a tragic love affair where he was in love with Daphne, and Daphne was cursed by another goddess, I think, and she was cursed to become a laurel tree. This is one of the reasons why the laurel flower. And if you look at the tarot card, let me bring this up quickly. If we look at the tarot card,
she was a nymph. associated with freshwater sources, renowned for her extraordinary beauty and her commitment to remaining a virgin. She was commonly described as the daughter of the river god Peneus of Thessaly, or the river god Ladon of Arcadia. Oh, with some sources attributing her mother to the earth goddess Gaia. And it is indeed Apollo. The most famous myth involving Daphne is her pursuit by the god Apollo. According to the most widely known version, Apollo was struck by a golden arrow from the god Eros, Cupid, which caused him to fall deeply in love with Daphne. In retaliation for Apollo mocking Eros, the god of love shot Daphne with a leaden arrow, lead into gold, making her hate Apollo. As Apollo chased her relentlessly, Daphne, desperate to escape, prayed to her father, the river god Peneus, or to the earth goddess Gaia for protection. In response, she was indeed transformed into a laurel tree, just as Apollo was about to catch her. And it is interesting because it is also Apollo who wears the laurel wreath, and it is the in Rome in the Romans, of course, who the Roman Kaisers, the Roman Caesar, who wore the laurel wreath, and which makes me think, as Rachel points out in the comments, it was one of the Louis, the sun god of France. He modeled himself after Apollo. So would that also be the case with the Roman Kaisers, the Roman Caesar, who by wearing the laurel wreath modeled themselves after Apollo?
This is a very interesting point, and I think there is definitely something to be looked at here. Like, for example, let's look at this. This is quite interesting. Is this up? Let me check if it's up. Let me pop it up. So here we have the world card, and this is a laurel wreath, right? She's dancing inside of a laurel wreath. So, like this laurel idea, and you see there, we've got the 4 elements around the laurel wreath. It's like subjectively talking to us about the emanation of like the ether from the sun. And so it's very solar power radiating this reality into being as an expression of the sun. And that laurel has become such a big part. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah. And it was Louis XIV who dubbed himself the sun god, or sun king, actually. He deliberately associated himself with the sun god Apollo to symbolize his absolute power and divine right to rule. So you could say that he mythologized himself.
You can imagine a king doing that if you've made some crappy decisions and people are thinking back like that king's head doesn't belong on his shoulders. And when enough people are whispering that in the crowds, the king's like, no. Like, I'm going to get married with the sun god. And then you guys will see who's
and this is
who's in charge. Yeah, like you mess with me, you're messing with the sun god, dude. Watch out. The sun will stop shining.
And this is an interesting tidbit. Louis XIV believed that France, like the planets, revolved around him, just as the planets revolve around the sun. So he really considered himself to be the sun, to be at the center of the universe, which is France.
Yeah, it's interesting. Is Trump modeling himself on Apollo?
Oh, that's
an interesting question. because you gotta wonder, like the way that Trump is, like, you know, he's all knowing, he's all powerful, and the whole idea of Apollo is very much about, like, I'm here to produce harmony. The whole world will be in a state of harmony because of me, and Trump's here to fix everybody's problems, right? That's his mission.
I mean, that's I just looked it up real quick, and indeed, the nickname Sun King has been applied to Donald Trump. The comparison highlights Trump's desire for constant media attention, his opulent lifestyle, and his tendency to centralize power. So, in that way, and this is also pretty funny. It's pretty correct. His Florida residence, Mar-a-Lago, is often cited as a modern attempt to emulate the grandeur of Versailles.
Interesting, huh? Well, brother, I think we're getting to like 3.5 hours. This was supposed to be an hour and a half.
Yeah, and then I jumped on and things got rolling. But yeah.
No, well, it's all good. It's been a lot of fun, man. It's been total fun.
For sure.
The world is calling. Just noticing it's like almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Gosh, I've got clients I need to attend to.
I mean, I still have things. I still have things to do as well, man. Like we're on the same time. Different countries, same time.
I've got some beans, bamboo shoots in the fridge. I'm supposed to make a Thai curry, so we're gonna go get cranky. But it's been absolutely fun. Big love, big blessings. Yes, namaste, sure. Rachel, and everybody else in the chat, and everybody else that's gonna catch this retrospectively. Take it easy, keep smiling, keep jiving. Don't forget, life is just a dream, and enjoy the dream.
Yes, sir.
Blessed be. Om Shanti. And we're definitely going to get together and do a show on your channel.
Yeah, we should. Yes, absolutely.
I'll touch you up. You look well again, by the way.
Feeling a lot better. Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, got to look after the dome, eh?
Yeah, I know, right?
Big love, man. Blessings.